anyone not ready?
Contention 1 is adventurism, lack of accountability and oversight on drones, says the president for unchecked adventurism, senior 12. New tech is short-circuiting the decision-making process. The White House argued that operations do not involve the president's troops and Congress to disappear from all decision about war to the map technologies that remove the human from the battlefield are becoming the new normal without debate. We have set enormous precedent in war and circumventing constitutions and a mandate for authorizing a drone into strikes or setting troubling precedent they might want to see followed, and only accountability prevents future interventions and escalation to drug. 12. Modern-day hostilities no longer require domestic sacrifice, concealing war from the mainstream consciousness that the public has fallen to the knowing of tech-driven warfare. There's no false new non not able to effectively mobilize a challenge presidential action and force the WPR when the public becomes advocate that Congress is under attack. The president is free to remain. The WPR can change people see more. A lot of presidential issues. The psychology surrounding mechanized warfare make it easier to enter hostility to the right escalation because the retaliation or fear that initial strike was so even if that blowback was sufficient to incentivize the populace and Congress mobilized involvement currently after the restraint should be in place before, and this would require public awareness and conflict escalation is the most likely scenario for war. Moscow. 6. Small extent of global complication language tech is spreading in the early stages of the third world war. The hotspots could ignite. The question is how effective major powers become regional conflict and from escalating. Ghost nuclear goals 97. The biggest cause of the engagement is the risk of being drawn into someone else's war. The risk of nuclear acceleration is the reason for nuclear exchange is the reason that America should keep its military out of other countries' disputes. And contention 2 is Al Qaeda. We're losing the war on terror. Al Qaeda Renaissance Jordan's homeland attacks Conglin 8-4. ACAP is emerging more deadly despite drone strikes. Al Qaeda remains considered that otherwise for diplomatic nations appear to contradict Obama's the war on terror was wrong too close. Al Qaeda is experiencing a renaissance whether organizing prison breakups or attempting to deploy terror uprising and remove Gaddafi. Allowed countries also flourish. One of Al Qaeda's central aims has been to obtain WMT, and specifically Yemen strikes are driving ACAP recruitment and Ackerman 8-12. Al Qaeda's same Yemen affiliate does wrong with the U.S. keeps embassy goals highlighting the weakness of drone strikes. The U.S. has launched 21 strikes in Yemen displacing Pakistan's epicenter. The U.S. doesn't have good intelligence. This bombing and which is neither sustainable nor wise on each occasion. Public rage inside ACAP rose to U.S. via white drones resources. The U.S. has become Al Qaeda's public relations officer. NAF slows those strikes. Burger 8-12. These campaigns constitute an act of war. The administration claim broad authority without congressional authorization to challenge the president's likely to argue the operations containing does not require authorization. Congress to write the WPR wants to exercise any oversight of the drone program and reducing drones, improve civil society, key to economic development, stopping ACAP. Mitchell 12. Victors will be resisting these resident agents mentioned that against homeland targets, civil unrest, and Yemen destruction, only fragile economy. The only way out is through economic development, economic development, strong political structure, and place extremism ensures the government has limited Yemeni situation when ACAP without building trust and cooperation, even a generous this may not lead to peace. Drones are attacks from the solution with the U.S. bar from undermining peace building efforts worldwide. When is an entirely new Yemen? Yemen is no longer needs to look away towards ACAP and an ACAP strike will cause extinction. Alexander 10. Perpetuates include Al Qaeda unconventional weapons are merging into technology levels offered new capabilities. Al Qaeda network have joined interest in actively attempting to attain nuclear weapons with significant threatening consequences of terrorism would be enormous if nuclear bombs stolen or built to result in massive devastation. Terrorist organizations become multi-directional bombs that finance the threats and capabilities of terrorism for the sake of all our planet's existence, and reducing drone strikes is key to Yemeni stability. Greenfield 13. Increase reliance on drones and right to hardening Yemen damage from drone strikes and the government and the percentage towards the U.S. This creates fertile ground for new recruits with the to support ACAP. The Yemenis accept the government must combat extremism but restrict U.S. control by associating with their drone strikes. The Yemen government conducts ability we cannot kill our way out of this attention. Must be focused on the effects of the strikes on governments. The administration should work with Congress to develop a more transparent process and legal framework to govern drone strikes and impacts as terror. Iran, Israeli war, and Iran, Saudi war. Burger 12. Current stability is foiling these series on control efforts in Yemen. The prospect of uncontrolled terrorism is likely to affect Israeli and Iranian calculation tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia have worsened in Yemen as the potential service may create gateway for illicit weapons as contribute to proliferation of WMD such developments. Good overcap with the chance of using existing weapons to build their own facilities and create stability in Yemen. Let's take up to regroup and post direct threats to Saudi Arabia and the Arab Peninsula and Iran. Israeli war causes Third World War III. Rufini 3. Israeli to strike on their own country would have consequences including major Holocaust, Middle Eastern oil shipments with cells all the world economy with the hell's acrimony rise that Russia and China might be armed and Iran Saudi war goes nuclear chain 11. In a Bolton Iran would have to decide to direct the heritage attacks and those with operated efforts to contain Iran would escalate a military confrontation with nuclear weapons could threaten economic stability of the U.S. The mission might be necessary. And contention 3 is drone proliferation. Drone proliferation deterrence without strong norms. Multiple scenarios for conflict. Oil 13. 76 countries required QFE technology, including Russia, China, Pakistan, and India, with demand of growing states having guns and America's ability to control the sale and lead to diminishment of the traditional conflicts with China. Building internationalism will be radically shaped by drone tech and its abilities driven by nuclear deterrence operates within new rules of the game. Attack departments that govern what those holding new weapons may not use the confrontations of because they are assumed to be costly and prone to escalation states may be more likely to engage in a drone for example, India, Pakistan, with untold consequences of misinterpreted drones might further determine relationships that between nuclear powers and the risk of conflict, rapid low risk and international mission that lead to an armed confrontation and the accident would be even more dangerous. The U.S. plans or nuclear orbital power drones, which can spread radioactive material like dirty bomb lethal drones, create the possibility of enormous and the use of force will pushing an international system back to the U.S. as set of new stress in the same kill form system without directional war given this there's nothing stop other stations following. American leader news using drones and Russia could use drones to strike the result would make the U.S. situation where such conflicts are contained but not resolved. And these go nuclear all in 2010. Efforts to be taken to constrain these arms and autonomous systems would open new possibilities of war backs to the escalating opportunity to war and then violation of the laws of war being perceived. U.S. accountability sets a model for checks and balances of who's go. 12. Georgia likely congressional oversight through administration design checks and balances of American policy or Jones must change drones and eliminate government systems if it cheerleading exercise legal courts they must be subject to checks and balances to prevent abuse of executive power to the executive branches can control without congressional oversight. Congress is circumventing the public order in warfare. There's a public no public safety drone action. The president says to ignore the hazard of drone war which man checks balance and scrutiny. And now this key window is closing for a model of establishing norms on drones. Roberts 13. You never maintain the window of opportunity for the U.S. to create a rest and is quickly closing job opportunity to provide rules and remains of the U.S. direction go along with towards establishing the kind of precedent of America in 5 years might find helpful in arguing against another's action. No one's heavy even when opportunity to legal agreements establishing no success most significant than spotting legal issues. The behavior of the U.S. history shows how states that have new military capabilities and is influenced by how other states have used them in the best academic studies fallacy. The effectiveness of norms. Declaration of war is key. Wiggly 13. Use of drones and government to allow the government warlords to legitimately liberal action that diminishes the moral authority. The U.S. can condemn similar attacks of power and denial effect and establishing which norms are respected to reinforce America. Use its power to embed norms about human rights and political organization and international system rule energy control to the presence of how it is that norms set president of warfighting drones advocates must consider the arms and the consequence of language legitimacy. To ensure use of drones in countries to revolve the presence about the U.S. There's a risk of weakening existing norms about the use of violence. Specifically, American drone precedent is used by China to militarize the Senkaku Islands. Boudin 13. China's movement to drone deployment could offer to challenge U.S. dominance in the Asia Pacific and is concerned about the lack of recognized standards about the drones like China is following the president thinking that if the U.S. can do so, can we drones are already patrolling China's borders. They may soon be appearing over maritime claims that show good sharp intentions where Chinese and Japanese boats already confront each other. And drones uniquely escalated Cayman and McClure 13. Drones against temptation escalated arms race between China and Japan. China is rapidly expanding drone program while Japan has become preparations experts warn that the possibility of future numbers is very high tensions. Russia to have this may result in escalation. Drones may be used to counter the Chinese warning ordinance, especially in Senkaku Islands and U.S. would be drawn in good cause global nuclear war. LN 729. What if a local competent originally escalates into nuclear standoff? It is good with the new Hawks and more the government of Japan basically dragged the U.S. into down deciding to get out of war with the nuclear armed China during World War I, outletting alliance drag powers and to war outside the Cold War alliance to do the same. And the clan, the United States Congress should determine that offensive use of combat drones constitutes an introduction of United States armed forces into hostilities as defined by the War Powers Resolution. If you are confused about the meaning of this previous statement, ask one of us questions. Contention 4 is solvency. WPR oversight solves and ensures flexibility. Laney 13. Probably costing a congressional check when they are merging in its important report and the president must report to attacks targeting the same group running the same country than one otherwise a concept of campaign and to obtaining approval would agree to greater legitimacy. Congress can trust the needs to address the lack of oversight for drones to go over through modifying the WPR. And the plan is the only mechanism that causes judicial enforcement and ensures covert projects. Farley 12. Effective accountability mechanism control policy mirrors by increasing cost and accountability mechanism reduce the likelihood of resorting to force and accountability avoidance of represents the fact of conscious authority to use force and the executive has best with understandability ability to is more likely to lead the nation to war. Congress is best with decision to strengthen accountability. Congress can define the limits of presidential authority and compel the human state Congress to reinvigorate the WPR statutory definition of hostilities will provide the judiciary with meaningful standards. Some statutes will but others have said new cause of action. Neither will impose accountability on the president as long as the judiciary remains and it maintains its efforts and needs to judicially focus on schemes to require congressional action. And this restriction on authority improves transparency. Patera 12. The resolution remains that vehicles will Congress to control public opinion and encourage the president to act in accordance despite its lack of enforceability. The resolution in large scale accomplishing its purpose to prevent secret activity. The resolution has encouraged transparency and allowed the Congress to shape public opinion. Congress was forced to present an abstract debate over hostilities without the benefits of the Congress. Language the president could not avoid. For the first time, the president recognized authority over resolution to restrict executive powers. Congress should capitalize. Congress doesn't mean that resolution prohibits the offensive use of drones and not key to public security. Can't solve without a drug. 12. Except there is a president will constrain no longer sufficient foster field. Find the president to constrain their own power. The problem is that records are when sunlight. Exist a large scale war such as the credibly control the president happens to probably sitting there. The president need not worry about when deciding to use the force driven wars with their triggers for checks on presidential action. Warfare creates a strong statutory barrier here between the president and the administration. The simple solution is increased level of public attentiveness, and the WPR solves minor 7. Opponents consider it to check the WPR is under service criticism to review the president being allowed to use the forces in compliance with the WPR. Some argued that complicity not related solely to political constraints down to WPR is its inability to explain who exactly has compliance with the WPR consulting and reporting requirements. After requirements.
When can we use drones post-planning?
If there's a report to Congress and a declaration of war.
How is that a restriction on drones?
It means that Obama cannot just use drones the way he's currently in Yemen. He doesn't have to get authority from Congress.
It seems like he can use them in the same way as long as he's like, yo, Congress, we're doing it now.
Your question is literally, why is the WPR a restriction? We think it's the largest restriction on the executive's authority to wage war ever.
So this restriction is just expansive. Obama can never use drones.
No, it's not that he can never use them. He has to go through a process of getting authorization.
So it slows down the process in credit, like a huge amount.
Yes, the same.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand this.
It's not like it begs the question of the war, right? If it's a war where, for instance, like China struck us with like a nuclear weapon, clearly it wouldn't slow down the process drastically because Congress would be like sign off.
So now
yes.
now it becomes a question of which war we are engaged in.
Yeah, obviously that depends on how quickly
It seems like that makes your
Congress signs off on the
restriction
war.
very not a restriction.
What?
If
Congress
you
has to sign it, Congress would respond to an
restriction
attack.
on his authority. It's like you may win that he will still use drones, but it's a question of authority and whether or not he has the authority to do such. We have limited his authority.
Post plan, where would we get drawn into or escalate as per your adventurism add-on or your impact?
The Boyle evidence is fantastic. It indicates there are multiple scenarios. It gives the example of Russia striking Chechnya, India and Pakistan using drones that causes miscalculations. There's also the Chinese-specific.
I'm sorry. Which piece of evidence do you think says this?
Boyle 13.
I'm talking about the adventures. Where does Obama go to war? Like, where does your
adventurism flow is about moral hazards and that there is no hazard to using drones because it doesn't cause any American casualties. He can use them wherever he wants. It's more of an
But the plan still allows him to use drones.
If there's a declaration of war, our solvency page indicates that would limit how often he uses
How
drones.
does Iran-Saudi the conflict escalate?
That evidence indicates that the United States would be drawn into this war because it is a massive foil.
How do countries perceive the difference between offensive and defensive drones?
The argument that we make is, you mean like in the norms in international
Yes.
systems? Okay. The Whibley evidence indicates that there is a declaration of war process that would get put into the international system. It means in order to go over hostile territory and not your territory, you would have to declare war.
That's fine. Your internal link evidence, though, says that drones are already flying on the borders that cause you the instability.
Sure, our argument is
why
that
it's
the
unique.
norm setting and the Whibley 13 evidence rewrites the way that we can use drones and restricts the way...
It rewrites the way we can use drones, but China still is
The Whibley
flying...
13 evidence is about international systems.
I understand, but
international declarations of
China
war.
does not have to rewrite its drone policy because of the United States.
No, but they adhere to declarations of war policy within the international sphere. This has been empirically proven with all Chinese aggressive attempts.
If drones are already flying, what other incentives does China have to go to war with Japan?
What other incentives?
Yes, if drones are already patrolling China's border.
As per your voting, our argument is that there will be miscalculation when drones are flying over Senkaku Islands.
But drones are already doing that. Your evidence says that.
It says they're flying over the border. The evidence goes on to say they have not deployed them over Senkaku yet.
Where do you think it says that? It says that. Oh, so they may also soon be appearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need proof?
No.
It'll be 5, then solvency.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's 5, then solvency, drone prolif, terror, adventurism.
Do you guys have another flash drive that's not working on his computer for some reason?
Mac doesn't like some flash drives.
No.
We can email maybe,
Yeah.
or if he has a flash drive. Whichever, it's up to you.
Them? They're currently their flash there.
Yeah.
The flash drive.
Email.
I mean, we have another flash drive. This one.
Can you get up on your computer?
Yeah, I can put it on.
There you go.
Okay. I have it up, but I do need a pen. Do you have one?
Oh yeah, I do.
Cool.
No good now?
No.
Anybody not ready? Sweet.
First officer negotiation just out. Iran strategy is working now. Congressional review to commander chief flexibility. Spoils negotiations results in Iran strikes and prolifis. Rubin, Intent 20 congressional seat Iran strategy working diplomatic thoughts defense result of pain taking efforts by lobbying pressure runs interest in diplomacy. Iran is making clear decisions to In case seriously Congress plays a crucial role in deciding whether or not to deal with the community this Congress, opportunity to partners this. The alternative Congress becomes one lawmakers and force in federal cases around the first of all. Fortunately, Congress Obama is not going to see civil matter to eliminate the Congress breathe. The relief did not have to vote on the commander chief Iran in right Congress to deal that will prevent from retaining nuclear weapon impacted by the 1AC Jane evidence. Additionally, the checks on the president make war more likely and result in a litany of existential threats that turn the app that is Waxman 13 war power allocations train U.S. action by single champ adversaries expectations. Most charged on that after the Cold War, the president remains expensive authority force abroad. Obama uses force with the Congress reflects frustration that we have the weakness of the government is mostly distance down from make us apart. The ability to force this essential power for in part of for plus university to create a commitment to the president. The powers of the presidential commitments in the major challenges that include the terrorist threat, the proliferation, the teaching about prices, supervised global interest, facing global presidential discretion, taking rapid action about the decision activity, secrecy, passion parts, rights, organizations with the Congress was the first to undermine the possibility to convince states who will see the fact that the announcement made election the officers like the fight to the end, the bodies perform such a throw through the mechanisms of the oversight and the funding discretions of one staff, the immediate impact of Russia's will ill-suited to receive negotiations, the secrecy much equal for the threats of force, transparency, fries, and war, and back conversations on the proposal person like authority in your the authority of the president said it clear as the most important to provide conversations to nuclear application diplomatic. The president needs the law to undermine the credibility used to the officers. As next off is the Counterplan. Text the President of the United States to request his counsel in the Office of Legal Counsel for coordination over his war power authority. The President should determine that the offensive use of combat drones constitutes an introduction of United States armed forces into hostilities as defined by the War Powers Resolution. The Counterplan is competitive and solves the case. Coordination with the OC can ensure executive action that's more than 11 OC basis. It's answer on the best people not merely what is possible. Once the OC runs the answer to fighting with any executive branch laws over by the President power overrules read version of evidence by the short term OC. That's a ultimate organization for providing credible and everything for analysis by us one of the main beneficiaries of organization OC. In whose case legitimacy the office can have provided other executive officers are employed in basically by law because the benefit of looking OC is trying to to the aspects and Mr. Newsroom's him to read. So the next house of politics is that CIR will pass out, but it will be a tough fight. That's North 1030 key. House Republicans including Power and working on document immigrants with the central issue. Democrats, Republicans, are communication, House National Demon, and Florida Senate become the first to sign a conference bill. The momentum because people believe that was supposed to say the House could act in November. Proponents are because of the Republicans sign the example when it's become serious when the Republicans are using more Republicans can operate. There is also for commerce between the House and Senate passing reform is going to be tough. The plenary versus these dynamics exports and interbranch conflict derails the agenda. The Schreiner intent costly political bias one policy reunited significant ramifications on a road which is important to the president. Congressional criticism steps into for other interests that home capital spend short of the foreign policies of capital unavailable in the present coalition have major ramifications. College and Congress appeals to the end of the second term. The best parents feel because the administration spent so much energy weary on his end Congress congressional opposition has the derailed agenda. Obama pushed locks up the House vote, but the window was narrow. The Shire in 1018. Many presume that the House is black hole, sending Obama's agenda into oblivion. But Venus Pastor Chase hope that through the link to immigration values to the bipartisan support Senate was given fresh push by Obama. The ministry while when it came, immigration advocates have one opportunity to appeal to meet their pitch to the unions. He can see therefore he's in the Democrats carry better will begin to anything but that road push immigration reform to the economy. That's more on 3-6 consistencies bringing that our broken immigration system hinders our economic growth and post-American global leadership and deputy innovation drives the economy without good skilled and skilled workers in the country. Transform to lean workers, energy and companies, foreign workers, immigrants, translate service, start with comes from the so much support groups, towns and companies cannot locate domestically. U.S. decline causes nuclear war. The Harrison Wars and terror troops becomes self-organized absent of economic health, economic interest out on the use of military presence, least states develop security risk, constructive pursuit nuclear measures to the escalation, and turning place focus on the escalating conflict over resources, protections and resistance results in nursing conflict teams who access energy resources essential for survival. Water becomes serious cooperation is difficult. Next up is topicality. Interpretation restrictions are prohibitions on action. The F is not the Schneider and Brown 12 ordinary definition restrictions is not the reporting running supervision black laws. The first restriction is limiting post to prohibit action. The Congress supervised who have no oversight or respect. The definition of restriction is very different. Limiting the supervised conditions but did not agree to restrict its license. Restrict means to reduce by limiting. That's freeishare.com 13. Restrict places limits or may reduce the influx of foreigners. Increases from a baseline. That's Rogers in 5. Increase from baseline to calculate here 4. The preceding change in determining value new increase in the value called the relevant baseline's value of preceding violation. The plan is in a pre-existing restriction of authority. It only regulates. It also increases authority because it increases the number of introductions into hostilities that Obama could do. Vote negative versus limits. Non-pre-existing restrictions open the floodgates to infinite mechanisms to restrict the executive that don't currently exist. Also allows you to introduce any form of hostility into the resolution. Second is ground D. The links are putting out current mechanisms for restriction. They will always be against that panel. The specificity debate. Next off is the criticism. The affirmative reads the supremacy of liberal legalism as a method of restraint that is morgulis in 11 legal scholarship, common perspective, repressive policies, temporary departure, ethics, somebody until the nation comes to see we do not find out how to get until next somebody does. The Luke happening north, the Tennessee, deep inside those who come to flood understanding policies. The purpose of scholarship was policy never this is the focus of reform to reflect the primacy of law to exclusion liberal dynamics from the dominant predication to be seen. This restriction of procedures provide the protecting there's political support to be effective. We must have changes by law. That causes endless militarism and exclusion. The alternative is vote negative to endorse political rather than legal restrictions on presidential war power authority. That's DOSA 99 lowest diplomatic face of the liberal civilization subjugation on the versus justified rationalization by the appeal of the liberalism and the presumption that the neutral objective status of liberal legal theories avails just not of restriction but also the imperialism and racism, the land theory loves inclusion of creatively partial the original others professional foreigner solvency. Congress will ignore presidential circumvention, strong political incentives that is dark. In 12, the Congress has been criticized for letting to enforce the WPR close loop rules of the President Congress Act. Sorry, the disappointed matter renewed and the President uses between the lack of the backbone general impairs, which has actually said to act Congress elects any incentive to act, even if Congress was active, would only be acting politically safe to do wartime states provides little advantage for politicians. Targeted killing regulation is impossible. There's plenty of avenues for circumvention that's ousted. In 11, despite these techniques of CIA to account, there's no evidence of any function of religion. Targeted killing. The Inspector General has been unable to extract killing with senior members of the Hezbollah CPDQ secrets with the press. The interior of the CIA failed the very whole official response to the wartime related coups, shall even the violating and definite pattern of accountability. The CIA enjoys complete meaningful accountability. Drum roll.
Yep.
App forgot to highlight the portion of the Roberts 13 card concluding that the use of drones outside the declared war zone triggers instability, which means the absence of sufficient since it still allows for the this warfare. The internal link to the Boyle evidence is surveillance drones triggering the AF only affects drones that kill people. This means that the comics and no drones are not special. They do not change the strategic costs associated with going to war. That's CNAS in 12. The states launching drones will weigh the diplomatic political costs of their actions, which makes calculus different than any other aerial arrangement. States maintain minimal air term stations will be for the principles of term state action. The very risk of retaliation in the states who use drones are not diplomatic, but the political ramifications are irrelevant. There's no reverse causal evidence. People who already have drones will not stop proliferating. Impact is a drone growth does not escalate. That is signed in 12. The serious diplomatic political costs prevent the increased drone aggression predicate states launching drones with the diplomatic and political costs on state actors have reasons to clear of extensive modernized drones that easily deployed most runways on state actor would have responsibility that states are unlikely consequences. The nation will confront terrorist force that containing serious risk of retaliation. AC will not be increased power protection. There is past experience based on no evidence of an instability. The Snaku conflict is inevitable. Your evidence is already occurring on the border, which is sufficient to cause conflict. No risk of escalation. That is cats in 13. Even though tensions with China, Japan are rising, economic and mutual assured destruction is uneven scope of fears materialization on the bias. Parties Japan needs and selling China boycott led all precipitate actual constant in the economic and economic independence Russians do Japanese defense like peace. China defense the former training to fight the mutual assured destruction warrant and the economic interdependence warrant also applies to U.S. China conflict. Allies will not bail unless this Walton 11 preoccupation use of diplomacy has been perceived to assure us through the Cold War. The U.S. needs to the credibility dominant theory with the bandwagon Soviet Union given remarkable to geopolitical position where the U.S. pledges credible commerce is they're going to use so we should ask the allies who has with Simpson to have a little accountability to do so. Syria proves that intel cooperation is strong because nations like the UK, France, and Britain also cooperate with us during even though they disagree. Terror. The app doesn't solve terror. 2 strikes a month still emboldens the terrorists. It just results in drone prolif and also leads to Adventurism. We're also winning the war on terrorism. No WB strikes. That's also 530. The U.S. spent billions of dollars spreading terrorists between MD, Palestinians, U.S. Involved convention attacks. The violent military carrying goal of nuclear biological attack. We killed a lot of people since the reform of regular. The Roberts and WD terrorism research center and the experts determine the use and attacking against Western technology to Iranian price and attacks become more available. There is no evidence that the jihadist extremists use have attempted to acquire material because RCB are in weapons. The AQAP is dead. That is version role in 13. AQB confirmed the death of the group's leader and founders right to kill and strike extension. Now, feels under enormous amount of pressure. The past 2 years, 30 leaders have been killed. The group is reduced. The camera strikes smaller compared to much above. The Special Forces US AQB has not tried to attack since October 2010. They planted the bombs, cartridges, the group flower, and the top section for AQB is early to survive. Blowback is hype. That's
Actually, sorry, skip that.
no risk of terrorism impact. This Mueller 12 illusionary proportion evident to combination terrorists might be able to instruct the FBI to singular AQ. Sleeping so that nothing shows the time and clinician eliminates separately. Hiding with the fabricator, nothing close to nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, even weapons. As part of the U.S. action with the individual capacity to handle the convicted ones of the arsenal is very thin. No risk of Iran escalation with Israel. That is Broner in 12. The council had on assumption that the server council of catastrophic conflagrations covered the price of running is well for retaliation will be dead. There's 1,000 dead running straight to close the room is assessment of the first hour over blown Iran will not be able to close water will not be Iran's interest in the server lead to the conversation with the US and Iran cell. A fair missile warfare is everything. The missile will be only limited physical damage. No Iran Saudi war. Let's call 13 if Iran goes the nuclear hub Saudi Arabia would motivate explorers from the nuclear chamber protection body would acquire weapons strong the kingdom would be developing the most conventional warfare in nuclear business. The thing was to pursue the security guarantee for Pakistan and the US. Adventurism. There is no card post serious status quo sufficient to bring in adventurers because the president has already set the precedent for self-restraint. There's no scenario for warfare, which means you should be skeptical of 2AC impact analysis. We would also win the war because we have the highest strongest military in the world. No risk of engagement. That's hurl and 6. The other important regional aspect of the U.S. ability to avoid entanglement or involvement in the state from the ensuring low common span. Benwell Gulf and the present is currently to occur the rumbling, which materialized for more threats about our conception made the individual unnecessary. We will not start wars or get involved just because we can. That's portion 12 critics that the military critics obligation might do any good. The temptation to reset the restriction of the argument was not to the case of Iraq, the intervention of the Gulf War, Bosnia, Libya, and it's only over 3% of the casualties of Iraq is the ally in the other intervention spend the Gulf War. The U.S. is right in for the countries in Bosnia, the EU develops one by the EU. The questions whether to continue to get them to the Cold War. So you're saying negatives.
Why does this last card that you just read not take out the impact of the critique? The United States will never get in wars abroad.
The critique impact is based on exclusion, and exclusion being bad. It's not based on infinite
That's
intervention.
fine. Status of the critique and counterplan.
Unconditional.
Okay, let's talk about topicality.
Sure.
To prohibit, do we have to ban the introduction of armed forces into hostilities?
Yep.
So all introduction of armed forces into hostilities.
As per the 1C, yes.
Okay, that's great. Let's talk about the OLC. Does it
Sure.
require Obama to report to Congress?
Well, that's what the WPR says, which you have said it does.
Okay,
then yes.
so he has to immediately report on drones. What's the net benefit to the county?
Politics and negotiations.
How does it solve the politics link, which is about him having to defend himself in Congress?
Because, yeah, 2 arguments. First, that the OOC shields the blame, which means that Obama can say it wasn't him.
Why does it
was
shield the
OLC,
blame
and
when
Obama
he's
can
using
blame the
drone
OLC.
strikes in Yemen and then has
Second.
to tell Congress?
Well, I mean, that gets to the second argument, which is that when Congress doesn't restrain the president, there isn't the same interbranch fight because he doesn't have to defend
Why
himself
does it
to
not cause the
Congress
same
because Obama
interbranch
is telling
fight if
Congress.
Congress will say no?
What?
Why doesn't it cause the same interbranch fight if Congress will say no?
I'm really confused what this question is asking, what the relevance of it is.
Okay, so is Congress going to say yes to using drone strikes?
I don't know. If in the 1AC they said yes, and they would say yes. If they say no, they say no. It's the same action as you have.
Let's talk about the link to politics. And
Let's.
your uniqueness seems to be talking about Denham, who is a Republican who moved over. Why is his capital with the other Republicans not sufficient to solve?
Well, because our evidence indicates that the reason it has momentum is that Obama is beginning to cooperate more with the GOP, which is getting the more moderate House Republicans
It seems
on
to be
board.
talking about the Republicans that shifted over to voting for the bill. And
Shifted
that's
over
why it
as a
has
result of
momentum.
Obama's continued negotiations. Our evidence is predictive and says that
Who
continued
does he
negotiations was
negotiate
necessary to
with?
continue to get more on board, which is sufficient
Who does
to
he
pass the
negotiate
bill.
with that Denham is not already doing? He said he would talk to every single House representative that was a Republican.
Right, our evidence is that the reason why that's ineffective is there's no overall coordination of the effort. So he can talk to everybody he wants, but unless there's like an actual push with people like Boehner who are cooperating with Obama and not Dinner, it's irrelevant.
Okay, so it's a question of Boehner. What does he do?
Not Boehner. I just said Boehner cooperating with Obama, which his negotiation leverage is key to.
Sure.
Is what I just.
Which Republicans? Like, I'm not understanding. There are ones that are ideologically against it. How do you shift them?
Well, right, our argument, and we can read evidence in the one to make this argument, the shutdown meant that those people are more alienated within the Republican Party, which means the more moderate Republicans in the House, which are the people that we can get on board for CIR, will be
Critique.
on board by Obama's negotiating.
Is all legalism bad?
Yes,
All of it.
all of it.
The alternative stance is that we should not engage in law at all.
Well, in the context of the app, we definitely shouldn't.
Okay, well, the alternative seems to be taking a political stance. I'm questioning what that, you endorse a political stance. Sorry, what is that political stance?
It's a bottom-up approach. We think that
Okay,
the
so
point
then
of
it
the
is
law
rejection
should not
of
be
all
the
law.
federal government. The point of the law should be political contestation from informal, non-governmental
Okay,
agencies.
so it is functional rejection of law. That's fine. All right, we're good.
Yes. I didn't read the card before and I read that card.
Incredibly happy.
That should be good. We have
Good.
15 left.
want to move over, or is this fine?
What'd you say?
Is speaking from here fine for y'all? You want to move over?
It would be better if you moved closer.
Yeah.
It never hurts to be close, yeah.
I'm with you. I like y'all fun arguments. That'd be good. This is like, is this gonna be too close to this thing?
Nah, it's fine.
Okay, I yell pretty loud. Just fair warning. Let's do. Let's do terrorism. Let's do adventurism, terrorism, drone proliferation, solvency, topicality, politics, Iran to sad, the OLC counterplan, and then the critique at the back. Yeah, let's do adventurism. Do you have all the case stuff? Okay, so, sorry, it's adventurism, terrorism, drone prolif, solvency, T, politics, Iran, the OLC counterplan, and then the critique. Just make sure it's you three, right? I guess there's no other. Yeah. Just didn't want to be screaming this direction if you were all that way. Everybody ready? You've conceded the boil indicates that there's no great power wars coming in the status quo, that the great powers don't go to war with one another. The only way that can escalate is because of miscalculation of drones in the status quo, which means you've conceded that we're the only escalatory nuclear violence in the status quo. They say President restraint Obama said that he could still strike in Syria, which means it's a win for Obama's power, not a loss. They say no entanglement. Yes, our moral hazard argument indicates that drones are a moral hazard for America because they go abroad seeing no cause and no bad things happening to them. They say that we won't start wars abroad. Yes, Bush and Obama already proved that. Also, you've dropped the Chechnya, Palestine, as well as the Uyghurs are all extinction level scenarios that other countries will use to justify abroad. You've conceded the norms solvency, which means we solve all drones worldwide. Now the terrorism invaders, they say winning war on terror, no conflict post states evidence. Their evidence comes before we literally had to close every embassy because ACAP said that we were going to strike. That's both of their pieces of evidence. They say no risk of terrorism. Yes, Counterplan says that they have scientists now, which is a critical threshold. They're also growing. They say they have conceded the Alexander piece of evidence indicates it will lead to extinction because of nuclear and biological. Mueller is only about nuclear. They say no Iran Israel war. We'll concede this. That takes out the impact of the Iran disad. We'll also concede no Iran Saudi war now. Drone proliferation. They say drones outside trigger. No, our norms evidence indicates that we would solve those. Outside of that, that's the Whibley and Fusco piece of evidence. They say don't change strategic costs. Yes, the moral hazard argument above. They say surveillance drones are what solve, but the plan would be able to solve that because seen as a moral hazard. They no longer use them aggressively. They say drone prolif doesn't escalate. Yes, it escalates. Our evidence says that happens quickly. If the U.S. doesn't set norms, they say already on the border. Our Bodine evidence is predictive and indicates it will be on the border. They say China won't use drones aggressively and that allies will bail. Neither of these are responsive. It's not whether they'll use them aggressively, it's whether it's perceived aggressively by Japan. Our evidence is better. The congressional legitimacy is key to ally cooperation that's interesting and not. Pressure don't like to the debate of the state to the height of the American the policymaker, the period realize absent and aggressive the effort to defend the American the position of the magistrate. How do the only way in the world international legal opinion, but how do they put important country to the U.S. and the official of the rest of the world reacting legally limit the willingness that's the other countries insisting American actors absent the absolutely I read this. Sorry, absent the effort of the support of the legitimate kind of the American party this to the government totally push the U.S. away to the holy justified the word of the target kill the defend the party the effort again the way the stand of the effect of the regulation according to which maintain the shouldn't say the category of the final the question of visible to the message standard requires attention alliance prevent nuclear war the Ross and 99 usually American governments will not wholly to the world alone to the only body the mission the capable of the U.S. and the leading part of the cooperative security management of the world widely shared to the world community and the plus for the hope of the avoiding warfare involving nuclear and WMD now solvency. Congress will not ignore. You've conceded that Obama is already going to pass this piece of legislation. Congress also checks him back. That's our drug and material piece of evidence. They say targeted killing regulation. That's not the affirmative war and introduction to armed forces T. We admitted that we prohibited the president from acting independently. Cards that we owe and using drug strikes, arguments, mandated counter-interpretation, statutory restriction, the court of the black laws. We needed limits of legislation. We made a restriction to the border. Powers authority limits the president's direction as global to the day with the card of the president's authority limits the president's discretion to conduct the operation. Authorized ability to attack the record of the confided the president's order to use. Armed for the church and the now permitted the president launch of the Baghdad affirmative ground is necessary. They would literally make us ban all war, which means China would obviously go to war with us and we would lose. Every debate good is good enough now. The politics they said won't pass now. Obama did not key.
New Zealand, Herald, and 1030, the password of the immigration of the current market, the bottom of the campaign to the group to the most republic, the comprehensive the single issue. As we move forward to the enemy rank in front of the general liberal inclination with the legislative weight of the uncoded of what they were allowed to vote on the issue conservative, the pressure against any legislation based not only opposition to the citizenship of the Obama's agenda, healthcare, Tom Seth Berman, and since we're not told the world of the healthcare, they throw the wrench into the Obama, the push to the immigration to the White House, started referred to the attention with the problem of the push to the website of the dominated the headlines of the administration, out of the attention is clearly divided, separated the film of the advocate, the getting overshadowed, this out of the political sign of the prince is taking up time, and consider the president's attention and political capital is not key actuality, right? That piece of evidence, PC, the kiss of death is no whiskey, and then 25 high profile to stand of the risky alien, the Republican, and nursing in the bruise of the egos shut down the partisan hemisphere to the bipartisan cooperative, less likely the Obama, the increasing the president of the immigration gives, that of the reform, leaders of the partisan, otherwise, they put the Obama, the Obama, the Moscow, and hurts them, and then more than helps them, the Obama, the part of the persuasion, the limited the House Republicans, the Aranaki, the growth that's laid, in 13 little, we began economically, the equivalent of the growth of 5%, they were 2 decades, economic percent of the economic, benefits will occur to the decade, after enacting any economic impact is going to be followed the margin, no scenario for economic decline, that's stress in 12 to the user, anything, no short of the answer, sort of the financial crisis will lead to the differential reward of the threat, power company, the aggregate, just suggest otherwise, when you quote the same to 2017, confirmed the research and naturally the conflict of protectionist nationalism, or ethnic exclusion given to the depth of the 2008 financial crisis of the property of the European percent of the great depression of the outcomes of the variables looking personnel, Iran decided Obama has no credit week, Congress budget Syria this fall, and then the White House broke the other rules of deterrence in 1 week the president or representative of the military for the close from Israel, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Japan, the Europe, North Korea, no doubt in the point of seeing the also animus, U.S. president of the game, but in terms of politics, they reduce the potential lack of control of the overheated American power that we needed, and Iran doesn't care about the Obama's ability to use just the RT, 13 around the aircraft sector, claims to the advancement of the Ministry of the enabled this area to confront the combatant multiple targeted the UAVs around the airspace of the Rovi, one of these days, due to constant prevalence in the frontier out of the guy, RGC, the electronic warfare division, to sufficiently override an alien drone to the guidance system, capturing the forcing the land of the running in territory WPR, ensures normal compliance and executive flexibility this winter and 7 WPR of the show with the view to the functional percent of the justice because the requirement to clear black letter of the water enforcement out of the structure of the Jones, out of the structure of the executive instead of the part of the WPR of the vote of the district of the Congress or the Republican, and Only formal. I don't need that card. No Ron Pro. Talk to me. I don't need this card either. President George doesn't matter. There's skip over to the 11th. China the refer to the end of the currency manipulation of the run of the nuclear weapons. There is sort of the past into the north. The presidential expectation of the report to the label into the international woods. One of the Obama, one of the Bush for the China the China the run of the president. No matter the shot of the just made the friends and the foot of the Americans and credit the notion the U.S. leadership of the natural. Living the front of the have the same effect. They're in the reading the geopolitical environment of the Brazil, the interest of the Turkey, the China. They're insisting on privilege. Come with the elevated status. Mark that status now. Counterplan. Permanent the Counterplan doesn't stop only WPR to the Congress force transparency to the public awareness as prerequisite to scrutiny. That's pretty terrible. Absent of the public enforcement, the plan is impossible. That's a drug piece of evidence. Doesn't solve. Future president's a bad president. That's free, sir. And what do they want to codified the the constructed to win the Romney right when they so the cold top of the right up the amendment policy and they put the shepherd of the next president. They found the legal structure. They oversight the executive part of the tax the executive of Congress granted the start of the true general the real laws and give it the run structure. Part of the American conduct of the capital of the world, the pride and the capital of the countries. It's another link to politics as whole. 13 the president's code along with the political opposition of the Republic. The reaction to this credit the executive part of the partisan conflict in the process counterplans are rapidly moves the discussion away from the front of the 6 of the Boston multi-actors is unfair because from the gets it alone they also fiat through the solvency argument that is but a fairness education justifies firm to the counterplan whatever the administration says not perceived credible at school 13 explanations limited with the administration started the secret words of the legal analysis quality the internal deliberations to be self-serving non credible out of the legal interpretation those who can feature the public contribute the mistrust out of the executive reorganization part of the more of the speech of the garb of the agreement mistrust the administration represent the secret word the president can establish short of the internal moves or to become the more legitimate turn the push out because the average share of the branch assets under the policies no LC can't solve the links of politics prisoner and 11 the more the hard to say that the OC to the ample they construct the perception of the ability to construct the capture these African and the OC is the fact the president also the penalty take the risk of the OC to devise the action the legal cost of the public will know that out of the reserve political cost of the action but the FGOs here to the against the new side the has for the device of the private the ignored the could be just standard the LC the being fair they would because the president lost credibility the Congress the OC the part of the executive agency the prosecute the OC's credibility to have been short of the air to the scholarship mentioned to sort of rent the president from and getting that action now critique Perm to both on policy focus this crucial returns ensures the public accountability of the political disengagement that's Miller. 12. Question whether the drones can be used only covered the part of the overall justice order without the engagement the policies of the impossibility engagement the order they must call the against the which order the constitution the understanding of the language of the society reported by that of the social critical hold of the the society demonstrated the hypocrisy of the language of the engagement participation of the public debate engagement of the political but the necessary to disengaging the quite to the engagement the most rated that the the contract of the policymakers or the relevant policy makers by engaging policymakers the forcing kind of the decisions and justify them now. Yeah. Now, legal restrictions awarded to the theory of the acceptance, self-serving, wrong, Sherman, and second legal device of the possible world and the political antagonism, which have exploded the horrific find that this by no means self-sovereign to the trying to legal form of the transnational movement is doing the fatal general trying to the positive the right. No means is incoherent. One of the resolution would be the very form of the process to minimize the danger of the attitude, a lot of the establishment to put the limit of the legally adolescents that are in grand perm. Do the alternative, the affirmative is step away from U.S. colonialism, slaughter of those abroad refusal. Stay focused on the state of rap as a cause market fill in, which is worse than Chomsky. And idea when you minimize the match, try to try to use even though they regard the total illegitimate eliminate the institutional structure when people can participate, you can go to the part of the can get over the private tyranny that there's much more to do. You have to make the use of the state of the time to recognizing the ultimately want to eliminate the scapegoating bureaucratic institution rhetorically tactic. Critics focus on a single problem that thinks a problem more than could kill and three government administration, the American, the competent, the effective, the American side of the government was wasted how this go to the new found how the new the books overwhelmingly start to the bureaucracy and the permanence of the control of the president leads to drastic misleading picture of the public employees and government in seasons of the trusting many problems that do accept the bureaucracy, this attitude and this attitude to encourage the defense of political rhetoric and public falsity demoralized indeed promotes negative assumptions about the brightest and most considering the public service created American bureaucracy does in fact order this starts often than it starts more often than assaulting the police vast majority where you take marked at take and the affirmative speech act is critical to change the drunk culture outside of the law. Prefer to the concrete evidence, but again in 13. Drunk culture is generally prospered to promote dramatically escalated to the front of the United States, they pursue to the safety and something the national security, the state, the military, the superiority of the service surveillance, the logic, sort of the regime, incontestable to the control of the created, the comprehensive of the mode, automated the warfighting capability of something even more fundamentally increase the depersonalization, dehumanization, not only the warfare, but more generally the social organization, the interaction, the terror, the turn age just living under the system of control over the course of one's life, over the course of one's whole life.
How does the judiciary check the executive post-plan if Congress doesn't respond?
How does the judiciary check? See, if you would have made this argument, we would have read a piece of evidence. A WPR case has never gone to the judiciary. Congress points to Obama and says, look, this law is now unconstitutional to engage in drone strikes, or it's against the WPR, etc.
It requires Congress to say, Obama, you just violated what we said.
I mean, yes.
Yes, okay. What piece of evidence do you think says Congress would do that when he violates the WPR?
Obama, we also make our drug argument, our drug evidence says that Obama would make a political calculation that if he wanted to engage in a drone strike, he would have to literally wage war against the country that he would like to perform the drone strike in.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about congressional review.
Yeah, our drug evidence indicates one, we're a war-weary nation that doesn't want to go to war anymore, and our drug evidence also indicates that the public would be like, yo, Obama, how about we not go into a third war? And the evidence presumes this and says that Obama wouldn't even.
War, right?
It says Obama wouldn't even go and try and drone strike.
He has to declare a war, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
He has to declare war.
Internal link to the first advantage, the no great power wars besides ours escalate. What piece of 1AC evidence do you think?
The Boyle piece of evidence indicates that no great power wars can ever rise above an escalatory conflict unless there are drones miscalculation. It literally goes that far to say there's nothing else that could trigger a miscalculation. Look, we have the red line, we have phones, but drones, those are where we think that we see a nuclear weapon coming in and then we strike. Drones are the only thing that are fast enough and speedy enough to cause that miscalculation. That's indicative of your internal link on the executive flexibility
says
dissent.
that nuclear deterrence creates incentives for great powers to not go to war.
Yeah.
Where do you think that this says anything about either
you miss,
non-state actors?
Read the next line that indicates the only way that this deterrence could break down is by the usage of drones.
Right,
I don't even have it in front of me. It says that.
Doesn't affect the conflicts rather than one and C,
yes, it does. It affects econ substantially. The fact that you don't even isolate a war would obviously impact that.
The PC is a kiss of death evidence. Your evidence says, I guess, that there's a fat chance that Obama can be hoping to get the House passed on immigration. This evidence is a won't-pass card tag.
Obama's increasing presence in immigration gives anxiety to reform leaders. GOP partisans who might otherwise support a bill balk if they feel Obama is muscling them. It hurts more than it helps. Obama's power of persuasion are limited with House Republicans. No, this is a lot better than saying no PC. This says PC causes it not to pass.
It's the Norwich evidence you skipped.
No. This is the Nowitzki piece of evidence I read. The PC is a kiss of death. That's the argument we read.
That's fine. The piece of won't pass evidence at the top says that single issue bills have moved forward. Why is this a won't pass card?
It says that it would pass in parts, not a comprehensive bill, which means it wouldn't include the important parts to solve the economy, that being path to immigration.
You read that says that.
That's the New Zealand Herald piece of evidence. It says it will pass in piecemeal reform, but not in a comprehensive effort.
Piecemeal doesn't solve
it. Doesn't include pathway to citizenship, which is your internal link to econ.
I guess I'm a little confused. So the only thing mandated by the AF is that drones count as hostilities, correct?
Right. Well, no, using drones offensively would, count as a war.
All the plan mandates.
What? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your question is.
Yes.
He would also have to go to war, right? Or have to go to Congress to approve it. That's in the politics.
I think so.
going back now. Gotta get to the bottom.
Yeah.
They all come to you, they get to sleep in your own bed.
You know what I'm saying? That's the only way.
I said, you don't have the credibility to sleep in your own place.
Yeah, yeah. My last name is probably.
It's dirty curfew. Is there curfew as well? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, those 3 cards right there. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Just to be clear, it's not the healthcare bonus card, it's the PC key.
Yeah, the healthcare covers it.
Okay.
I can see everything that's going on. I have a discussion like that. Set everything.
And then alliances.
Yeah, I got
By the way, put this whole black box on your screen. Good morning,
Once you start going to a sensitive website,
If not, though, don't.
one of those times.
Am I able to view things? Kind of. Looks like that.
You have to have a proper feature on it.
Just so like you can see.
5 feet chain left.
Yeah, I can just look at it. Just my laptop up right there.
While I'm flashing it, the order will be the critique.
No, there's
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where's what?
Are we good for an order?
Yeah.
Okay. Critique, counterplan, solvency, drone proliferation, the terrorism advantage, the adventurism advantage.
What's after solvency?
The drone prolif advantage.
Terror than adventurism?
Yep.
Cool. Critique not going for permutations or test competition not and advocacy also no impact on the counterplan there. Therefore the counterplan solves the entirety of the case lens through evaluating this should be sufficiency. Just saying that the counterplan is a little less than the plan does not mean is not a quantifiable solvency. There's single evidence says that we just need to send the signal. They have no evidence that the OLC does not send the signal means that we solve the first advantage. The Mitchell evidence from the second advantage says that the set C threshold is so low that makes it easy to prove the sufficiency standard. It says that we need to reduce drones to stop terrorism. If the AF does it, then the counterplan surely does too. Their fuse evidence from the third advantage that makes the rest of the advantage so irrelevant it does not matter. It says that the policy of drones must change. If the affirmative does it, the counterplan does it too. Now therefore all the evidence from the solvency contention. I know they are going to go over this for the solvency deficit. It does not say it does not solve. It does not say what it tags. It says that they just need effective accountability mechanisms and a president with unconstrained authority means that is better. Our Morrison evidence says that the counterplan provides those accountability mechanisms because he has no way to circumvent it. And the OLC is binding now. They say permutation to the permutation to the counterplan. No, the restrictions are a prohibition. Different than the counterplan. That was the T, but I'm not going for T. But that argument still applies. The counterplan is not a restriction because you could have just if the OLC told them not to do the plan, he wouldn't have. Now they say they're drug evidence to solvency deficit. That answer was answered above another plan. Still solves it. Sends the signal that terrorism 5 months following 9/11. The OLC responded to the request of the domestic law. Under the profound implications for IR, they knew that the word guide the rest of the branch. And apparently the signal is sufficient. This proposer and 6 of the executives credibly promised himself this binding to propose a high cost available motive actions. The president's great defect war the ship of the legal landscape of the future. The president might comply to himself. The future judge generated a new coalition defending the rules. The president you might use formal and informal to bind themselves. It does not matter whether the constraint the formal is informal. The president might gain credibility by the public committee himself. Now they say it doesn't solve the future president. No, the OLC is binding. OLC is binding and it solves future presidents more than the 13 in the most obvious way. The law can have to go to any effects of the actors have internalized norms. Whether there's authority effects or decisions or practices, the executive develop their own internalizing practice. The commitment to within those boundaries. There's commitment to legal constraint. The OLC has no mandatory jurisdictions. Establish the tradition to read the conclusion that presumptively finding the OLC made is significant and advice with the executive. The president must maybe concerned without regard to the most senior. I think internalization that will explain the stand-up between the justice and the officials who were in the surveillance program. The program was important. The agent head of the OLC refused to certify the program with the White House back down. Now their next argument is that it links to politics. No, it doesn't. The post 11 a favorably advisory from the neutral the legal body has been credibility with the Congress and the president. The OLC would cause political opposition to melt away. The president will use OLC only because the OLC has strengthened. I know their next argument is that process counterplans are bad and we've got the resolution of the counterplan is good. It's key to negative ground to test the mechanism of the plan. They should have advantages based off of the statutory judicial restrictions. They do not. They also increase the truces for the thing to tailor add-ons around the mechanism of the war part. There's also no offense here. No reason why it is better than we do not make it impossible there. Also, we do not say that Obama has to the plan is if the OLC recommends it, which means they could have just said the OLC would not recommend it. Now it is in the literature. McFadden, Signer, and 13 the debate over which institution is best suited to the competing national security concerns of the limitations on the Congress of the courts to increase academic interest and checks within the executive to constrain the power groups that we are the sufficient. They say not credible answered above OLC. Links to politics doesn't solve that. The court does not make an argument. OLC must with the opposition and the solvency proves. Now the solvency debate there is way too little time here. Cards are just too good in theirs. So the circumvention means that it never happens in Congress. Can do nothing about it. Nothing about the WPR or the AOMF because they have no backbone. They do not want and they can never decide when to act, which means that it is insufficient. Independently, there's an election in demographics internally to this. It says that the Congress will only act if it is in the interest, which means Obama can circumvent it any time he wants. Our second piece of also evidence says that he will use other venues and there's no accountability regime. Here is more evidence in near reforms for Ackman in 611. It is not a positive news enough to narrow status that challenge the venues that work more than the surveillance party to generate the systematic pathology of the Patriot Act of war terms and dramatic reversions of the ARMF is redefine the same true redefining proper scope of the high-tech surveillance and wartime making decision it would be wrong for Congress to suppose only some statutory fine-tuning is necessary. Mark that necessary. Now Congress lacks the mechanism to enforce that statement. And the law has an effect of the president has the validity of the Congress has to assert the rights within both the commission and settles the consultation refer before the laws mandates the consultation formal reports of the determination operation. There's no penalty, non-compliance that guarantees the future presidents may ignore the lawmakers that they say Obama is going to pass it anyways. That is insufficient because he can use drones in other ways independently. There's no evidence that supports his claim. He has the motivation to circumvent that, to be able to use drones whenever he wants, so he doesn't have to engage in hostilities of the status quo policy and the inherent space for the affirmative. Now the drone proliferation advantage advantage. The drone proliferation advantage there first. Our CNAS evidence is better and says that there is no different calculations that go into air force restrictions and drones restrictions because they are still flying over airspace, which makes it no difference between that there, which means that if the status quo doesn't trigger link, if the status quo doesn't solve, then the I certainly doesn't. There's also no impact of seeing evidence. This phenomenon says that diplomatic crisis and the weaponization is too expensive. There's also deterrence that checks out here is more obvious. Here's evidence that the legal model fails, which proves their adventurism organization and the drone proliferation. That's law under Section 12. The appeal of American Constitution to the model of the country that we are waning. The global adoption of presidentialism and judicial review is decline. U.S. Constitution appears to be little losing. It's a really appeal to the model. The hypothesis suggests the superior competitor decline. And American hegemony, the judicial partialism with constitutional opposition, and exceptionally the notion that a particular constitution and serves a dominant model to make be absolutely difficult to pinpoint a specific constitution or instrument that is a driving force against global constitution. Polycentric decline is indicative of the border decline of American soft power. The Supreme Court has undermined global appeal of feeling allows the countries for the contribution to the U.S. is revised bill of rights today. There is no guarantee countries to follow. There is also no impact to self-defense and no impact in self-defense turns your norms and prolific advantage margin 12D in international arena relying on the very expensive interpretation of the right of self-defense with the undermine the Obama's administration to legalize the incredible proliferation of SDGs while just at Bellingham prolif does not cause wars of restraint to win out. That's score 12D. The proliferation of drones UASA is changing the technical predominant missions of drones to the late effectivity. Even the players are predominantly employed by the intel arms details is in niche functions frequently the heads of the companies that have declined the ability to connect the remote companies increase exponentially. It's difficult to coordination influence the conduct the air operation of the current and presence armed drones mark that drones now there. Next argument they saw drone self surveillance, so they're not there. And their uniqueness happens from the advantages proves that because 76 countries already have that. The surveillance capabilities, no reason they stop using them or stop using it aggressively when the CNAS evidence disproves that they say your next argument is that it is perceived as aggressively. No, it's not that. No, it is not that. That is our third piece of evidence. The evidence says that they would not be perceived as aggressive independently there. Independently, it would be perceived as aggressive. There's also no impact to no impact to China, Japan, with as a Cat 13 even, though through the tension between the sides, the economic mutual deterrence is preserving the uneasy status quo appears might not be material Chinese by the Japanese products as much as they need to supplement the Chinese as boycott the Japan allowed the economic miracle, economic independence in Washington, commitment to Japan's defense will likely to be China and Japan's strength of the fighting. No, there is no Senako conflict. Terror 13 Chinese and Japan have appeared ready to battle the like Tokyo, Beijing, have the shadow boxing, nothing has happened prospering as both sides show the willingness to reestablish stability roots of conflict, reason not to be exploded marches they cannot afford conflict and any Asian neighbors mark their neighbors now marking all the associate key to cooperation. No, there's a bunch of all causes like indefinite attention independently. No reason other countries want to get on board. That is our that is wall evidence from the flow. Now the terrorism advantage. They do not terrorism is that now we are winning the war. We're winning the war. We spent a lot of money on. We spent a lot of money on independently. Terrorism doesn't cause extinction. Real evidence says that they don't have the technology, capabilities, or intelligence, or the effective places to do it. They are disconnected in communications. I mean they get attacked. They say there's also no attractive use. Mueller and 11 no information has unheard of the suggest these potential menaces. A topic about the inflated the public shows the negative fighters warning the terrorist atomic group. Budget on the research on almost on the chemical weapons was $2,000 to $4,000. Has probably engaged in drone strikes. It seems breathtaking, unlikely that the group has any later money set up the uranium size operation known to a neutral kit cell has been found. The market found all the terrorist threats are low and they not coming back. Argument 13, the heads of U.S. agencies by just by the apparatus on the verge of the Al Qaeda so degraded they were unable to carry out large-scale attacks in the West affiliates of the focus on local Texas. Not a single spy chief hinted the consideration of one terror. Al Qaeda is no longer the seeking that would at least weapons and being guys who looks at the far from the left and said that would only diminish because of an aggressive wartime apparatus is doing the legal merger. Now there is no bioterror virus and the United States is not likely to nuclear force to respond to biological weapons. The notion that we have a man who dangerous biological weapons is as well as scenarios over the United States self-defense scale that seem to be attacked discussion out of the realm of reality. There are a lot of mockers but in fact there are no advances by technology along the chain of the situation. No terrorist group would be capable of pulling off a massive fire. There are a number of reasons why the United States is not likely to use a nuclear weapon that can prove that the difficult to come so also means it doesn't escalate. Now there last advantage which doesn't last advantage begs the question of the drone proliferation advantage which the known models in it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They've also conceded no adventurism, which means that we would not get drawn into war. But now the status quo solved anyways. And the 5, the president remains accountable. Then others, the president does answer the national consent with the president accountability will become more pronounced foreign policy arguments in favor of the requirement of Congress authorized to not expand congressional participation or represent the United States. The Congress considers any broader than the president. Congress might be susceptible as the president temptation to use war and the context of the best powers. The marks of powers like there is no scenario for escalation, which means that you should have a high threshold for what constitutes an argument.
High threshold for what constitutes an argument. You read a piece of evidence from 2005 that says this current president, remains more accountable than others. That would be Bush. Do you have any piece of evidence that actually responds to drone proliferation and Obama?
The evidence says that presidential accountability.
Well, the president remains more accountable than others. That's Bush from 2005. That's fine. Let's talk about OLC.
It's talking about what presidential accountability means, and the reason they're accountable is because of things like public involvement
it's discussing
in the political.
a different president.
It's
Let's talk about the
it's
OLC
talking about the theory of
counterplan. In OLC, right, said that Libya should have been an illegal war. Obama decided to go ahead anyway. It seems like this precedent should disprove that the OLC
if
can
you would have
cause
made
Obama
that
to do
argument in the 2AC,
we did make that argument. That's the OLC card that I spent like 9 minutes
your
reading.
Posner evidence does not talk about Libya. Also,
Yeah,
the
it absolutely does, and says the OLC said no, and Obama said yes.
Our Morrison
anyway.
evidence and our evidence is predictive of that and says that it is binding in the fashion
No,
that
how could it possibly be predictive? It comes from before Libya.
the evidence from 2013 does not come
Which
from
piece of evidence comes from 2013
Morrison.
post Libya?
Morrison does.
And why would it circumvent them in terms of the WPR?
Circumvent who?
Why would it? Why like? So
What are you
Libya
saying?
is applied with the WPR and says this would be a breakage of the WPR. Do you have any piece of evidence that says that the WPR and the OLC are credible in terms of it and its interpretation?
Two problems with that argument. One, if you win it, we win circumvention.
Maybe I have a better question. Yeah. So you read circumvention arguments that Obama will just circumvent.
Yeah.
Why does that not apply to the counterplan?
Probably does.
So circumvention, no counterplan.
Though I feel like if I win circumvention, I'm in a good place because you don't have
I
it.
mean, sure. Let's talk about politics. Why does Obama? Why does that counterplan not link to politics?
The OLC provides the cover, and because of things like
Okay, so there was again massive backlash to Libya. Your piece of evidence on this one actually comes from 2006. Why would that not?
One, I don't think that's correct.
Your melts away evidence.
The
Posner
Posner evidence from 2011 comes from 2011.
Okay, that's still 2 years before Libya, right? Or a year before Libya.
Again, Posner says that
That's
the president, the OLC, would
That's
cause political opposition to melt away because of things like the people on the OLC
sure.
are bipartisan.
You read a piece of
They're
evidence-
from Republicans and Democrats.
You read a piece of evidence. It's on norms. It's like a law of Ridge, something 12 piece of evidence.
Yeah.
This piece of evidence discusses how people don't model the U.S. Constitution.
People don't model our policies. Yeah.
Don't model our legal policies. Why does
Seems
this
like
link
the
to the
effort would be a
affirmative?
legal
It reads
policy.
specific norms evidence from drones.
Seems like the effort would be a legal policy. You change the document.
No, it
It
literally
talks about how
says
countries
that-
look at other places to
It
model
talks
what
about
they
how
want to do.
Afghanistan no longer models the U.S. Constitution.
You are correct. That's part of it. The law evidence says that the people model now
Control
based
F
on a
it and tell me-
polycentric nature.
I want you to read the line that says drones for me.
It
Control
doesn't say
F it.
drones.
And what?
It doesn't say drones.
Then why would this apply
It talks about
to
other
legal
countries
models?
modeling policies.
That's
It-
fine.
we have other evidence that says no reverse modeling and that stuff.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
No. I need you to read one card. 2 seconds of prep. Ready? Yeah. There, here. Okay.
Is the Kurdish reading coming from your speech shop?
No, I would give it to you. I'll just have it hand you my computer.
Okay, that's fine.
The order is the counterplan. The counterplan. Topicality. The Iran dissent. Politics dissent.
Right here.
Yeah, all of that.
Counterplan. Topicality. Iran dissent. Politics dissent.
First one. Is that pretty good?
Actually, just one more time, sorry. Something T, Iran politics?
Counterplan.
Counterplan. Cool. Let's do it.
OLC deflects the blame from Obama that his poster on liberal Congress claims that his policies illegal. The president can respond by lawyers' advices. 3. Supposed to blame the president first of the Senate compromise appointment. Thus, the leaders give bad advice to the Senate. Blame the blame must be shared. Second, OLC lawyers care about the future president will turn their ability to avoid the scandal. Said Mariner plausibly advice. OLC's opinion is not really used. Justifying the OLC thinks it was a judicial function.
Topicality.
There are 2 dropped interpretations, which means I don't have to spend very much time here. First is the restrictions are to decrease by limiting. That's the free dictionary evidence. You can see that you just jurisdictionally cannot put a point because the affirmative only mandate said drones are put into the category of hostilities. Our argument is that this is bidirectional because this increases the amount of hostilities that Obama can introduce into conflict because it means that drones are now additional hostilities for Obama to introduce. This is a conceded argument that means that the app is anti-topical because it net increases the introduction of hostilities under Obama's war power authority, which proves that you cannot jurisdictionally put a firm because they are anti-resolution sightings that increase means pre-existing topical drone apps are increased core restrictions based on either geography or AUMF limits. The impact of this is limits because there are an infinite number of new mechanisms that can avoid. The 2AC only has one offensive argument, and that is that we limit you to 4 affirmatives, which we clearly do not because we're not going for the prohibitions argument. Because that is not mutually exclusive with any of our interpretations. No reasonability argument in the 2AC, which means that's just a question of competing interpretations. Even if there was, and I miss, competing interpretations are good as to avoid judgment and intervention because anything is subjectively reasonable, and the only definitive standard is whether our interpretations have better for me. Given that there wasn't a reasonably standard, the threshold for winning office is low. Iran. Concede that Iran doesn't care about drone strikes and that the president is not necessary to solve flexibility, which means that there's no impact to the dissent. There was also never an impact to the dissent. That was conceded from the case, which means that there's no external offense for the... Yeah, politics. Dissent always the U.S. economic decline needs to protect us from diversionary warfare, which makes miscalculation and great power conflict, and that will notoriously affirm the ace of one is adventurism. Adventurism is what happens during times of economic decline because the U.S. has an incentive to fabricate external conflicts against both of them in order to reflect the economic blend that Harrison Burroughs' piece of one is prolific, and nobody mauls us if we are economies collapse because they have an incentive to increase drone use in order to gain leverage in the international sphere. Season one is terrorism. You can see that terrorism is increased during times of U.S. economic decline because Harrison feels self-radicalized during the decline. That's the Harrison Burroughs episode. 2AC1. First is there is no uniqueness argument in the 2AC, which means that the link shapes to direction uniqueness. The plan guarantees a fighting Congress that spills over and kills Obama's agenda, which means that you do not get a uniqueness overwhelms the link argument in the 1 AR. Second, that you should prefer predictive evidence. Your evidence is a snapshot of statutory politics, but doesn't assume future momentum that is based on Obama negotiating power. Now, the bill will pass now. Momentum. Key House Republicans are tackling legalization, multiple to effective support, compromise approach, comprehensive lobbying against opening possibilities, prefer predictive evidence. The Democratic bill is bipartisan, which means that more people are willing to move over time. That's want to see no evidence. It will pass with Obama leadership. That's Sanders in 1028. Immigration reform has started the House Senate bill. Compromise Obama should not only get down debate or also be pressured by to avoid the president overhand. He should the president have the by no means suggesting that Obama will become a bully on his spears. You break away from this fight. Momentum and bipartisan. Now let's lead 1030 Philadelphia. B. Can the Republicans support the reform helping bill? Momentum for right. Demonstrating the Republican leadership support for the party address immigration. The little public support has additional bipartisan achievement. It will pass now. That is more war and status quo. 1024. Obama should the immigration conference. It's time to pass leadership. But we still to pursue something Obama so that Baker can be accomplished. Our choice number 2. No healthcare thumper. Pelosi got the blame. That's page 1030. Sybil's is in the public face of the AC having to do with lightning or during controversy could be a useful diversion. Your evidence does not say the word political capital, which is the threshold for what constitutes a linked argument. There is zero impact on Obama. That is coded in 1030. Health and Human Services Secretary Staples Self for apology. I'm accounting for you. The Republican partisan Sebastian is responsible to specify that homie capital I am responsible. No evidence says that Obama is being to blame for website deficiencies in his domestic agenda. Just that some people are pissed about it. Now, tweet number 3 first is PC doesn't feel. When is he sharing evidence? He said Obama is getting Republicans on board through the leverage of negotiations. Your evidence does not assume the negotiating power, not the overbearing political capital that Obama was spending in the past. Additionally, is Obama's negotiations are key, but he is using restraint, which avoids the reason why PC fails. That is no work. In 1025, one champion of immigration justice safety Obama would defer to restraint to show that the judgment of how widely President passed he uses blame over the president. Definitely a big player in getting immigration reform done. We do not believe the French British conference undermines the effort. Capital is key. Obama's a necessary broker for compromise. That's Bennett and Parsons 1024. Obama changed tactics. Obama interested. He might consider practice small bills. Republicans new and different ideas. White House officer revisited those teams. All but jockeying embracing the community. Compromise remains possible. Obama's game for support. House Republicans security years. Once Obama's up with his own trend in crafting a deal. Now, choice number 4. The immigration bills key to the economy increases the sustainable worker base, which means that small businesses are exponentially growing, which is the basis for the U.S. economy. We don't have to wait larger spill everything just so that it props up the U.S. economy sufficient to prevent a double recession that's coming successful. Here's more evidence that the consensus. Wow. And statistics are on our side. This Abraham and Goodyear in 10.6. Immigration reform can unleash the full power of the U.S. economy. And so it shows that the Cato instruments that reform would increase GDP by over 1.5 trillion. The non-partisan commercial budget office determined by 1.5 billion analysts published by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Tickets, by the way, would create 125,509,000 jobs, increase GDP by the almost 5 billion in the 4 years of market immigration with the benefits in place. You can already spend on career jobs. The successful investment in the family fixed virtually guaranteed limited economic risk for jobs. President's failing immigration in the legal places completely fairly important immigration reform is a viable option. It controls every internal link to the economy. There's credit in 13. The sluggish economy can get a lift in immigration, good entrepreneurship, increased demand for housing, increased tax revenues, help reduce the budget of state industries, help find where's any immigration, increase in demand for productivity, helps drive innovation, low prices, proposals, which track workers with microscience, 40% scientists, U.S. and immigrants are likely to start business 1.5 trillion in the U.S. economy. Immigration key to food security, that's ACR, instead of agriculture and agriculture industry needs considerable order for the function labor shortages for the national corporate use continuing shortages for industry shift and production, U.S. stretching the taxes and the economy continue to fail to have comprehensive foreign place in the U.S. food security, global economy is nuclear war, that is Topicality in 11 things could start our brother and time another time to be the people we're good actually they can be generous and they can be poor in harsh way we're done for the decade state of the planet which is weather and civilization to fail harvesting with the food in the shower and the cost of governing left side the feather food rights will come and even covers the game restraint the global economy would unravel. Now the last argument is the Drenzer evidence versus that slow growth is sufficient to cause war. That is O'Hanlon in 12 the economic weakness started because leadership of countries see the way to take actions to keep system and never commit to the pursuit of new government series will be rushed in war is like the government taking for policy control the countries moving forward. The freedom of government series is not any picture required economic state with the possible of range of foreign policy established this evidence begs to question the internally have disagreement that CIR achieved the economy. Obviously, it's not resilient. The terminal impact of the Harrison Board evidence was all explained in the overview. There's also no resiliency. That's Sora in London. New York Central will be worse than the last, but difficult to apply. We have resources who make us start putting weakness on our side. They feel like depression. Another term, more like last one, even more vulnerable. 2007, they recently we don't know 3 years ago. Policy from countries see this time. We're trying to version no policy effect to counteract it. Harrison Moore's evidence is an increased miscalculation because the U.S. goes to war with everyone, which is something your judgment evidence doesn't assume because it doesn't assume U.S. stationary war theory.
I have a question, just to make sure. What are the add-on impacts again? It's just food?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Can I have my computer back?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Oops.
That was really dangerous.
Just like so I can. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Alright, I'm good.
Did you say stop, bro?
Yeah. Yeah, like. We should take a second to prep another one.
Oh, you keep track of it?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bother with that.
Yep. Alright, we're good. Sorry. This
6 minutes.
You changed the highlighting on one of these
Yeah,
cards?
about 6 minutes.
Do you want me to resave it? It's just a highlighting change on one of the cards.
Could you?
I was gonna say, I presume you want to know the
left.
difference in highlighting.
I think y'all are
Thanks.
about 450 though.
Did you?
516.
Oh.
Alright, that's fine.
Great when they don't argue back. So I really had you 35.
That would just make listening to the 2 and R suck, so.
You want this timer? Can I have this timer?
Nah, I'd like the timer.
Okay.
But actually, no, you should have it. That's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I have mine.
Okay. I feel like we time would be a good idea.
Yeah, I got it on my computer. Solvency. Then drone prolif. Terror. Adventurism. Topicality. OLC Counterplan. Politics, you said?
All three photos, T, OLC, CIR.
Yep. Anyone not ready? Group the circumvention debate, terror and drug answer. The plan would result in President Obama having to go to the public and disclose the reason for going to war. This means that the public rallies behind Congress because there's a specific declaration of war that can point to the public. Is war weird? This is unique in this claim that's not handled by the negative and the minor evidence directly answers all this. The reason why the WPR has failed in the past it is change. As forced Obama has forced every president to at least notify and farther evidence in case that the WPR means the executive limits his decision to go to war because he knows that at some point he will have to justify. Additionally, it provides the judiciary with a meaningful standard to check the executive now on the drug proliferation. They've not answered the Boyle evidence and the deterrence checks arguments that were dissuasive means that they get no impact analysis because the deterrence of mutually assured destruction will ensure that no wars happen. Now, on the calculation, a different argument is that status quo does not trigger this. Was the Boyle evidence that was explained. Well, the no impact evidence does assume that the Boyle evidence is far better, and I'll stake the debate on this. The Boyle evidence indicates that there is miscalculation that occurs in a world in which drones are used. They don't deter any kind of functioning. Actually, go back to solvency. Sorry. No circumvention. The president is politically motivated to be legally bound. Legally, Ballinger 13. Could the president always limit constitutional authority with regard to these rights? The administration is obviously loyal to this administration's law defending constitutional layers and powers. So the policies are the same as the president administration. One here, what is really written exactly what is president administration. The Bush administration is relied heavily on the president's constitutional authority. I'm not sure that administration officials would be very reluctant to have us to acknowledge that they are outside of the grant given to them. Congress now back on Trump. Sorry about that. Now the no modeling argument of the Whitley evidence is far better indicates that the declaration of war would reshape the way that internationalism perceives the United States and would force them to have a declaration of war means we solve the modeling claims. Additionally,
We don't need that card.
yeah, it's fine.
Self-defense doesn't take out.
Self-defense doesn't take out. Obama can only wage war defense. Can only wage defensive war because the WPR plan reverses his pause 12. Obama did not claim an authority to take the nation to war without authorization. Obama will not exercise an authority on his own to use military force to counter the fact of war in self-defense against armed attacks and collective self-defense without a country to war. Authorization of international Obama can actually exercise his authority, pretending that such a country does not amount to participation in hostilities or war publicly counter. What?
Group their evidence doesn't assume miscalculation.
Group their evidence doesn't assume miscalculation. That was all above.
And now go to terror.
Yep. Terror.
Actually, take out a terror.
Okay. Terror, not going for it. Looking to the defense. That applies to the disadvantage turn. Adventurism. Their modeling argument was answered on the floor, and all of their miscalculation arguments were also answered on the floor. You can cross-apply them here. All their reasons why those wouldn't happen are also answered by the Boyle evidence. T.
Add-on.
Oh yeah, they've dropped the add-on on. They've dropped the allies add-on. That evidence indicates that that the plan is critical to congressional legitimacy. It is perceived internationally. The Counterplan doesn't solve this because it has the OSC rule that checks all nuclear wars. That is an add-on. That is a drop in ways and solves the disadvantage. That should be sufficient. T. Extend our counterinterpretation that we just have to restrict presidential authority. They've conceded that we are core to the topic and that is very critical to affirm the ground. WPR has the best constraints on our executive power and the best inserting the executive counterplan, otherwise it's suicide. They also conceded that their interpretation requires that the president to ban all war, which means that it was suicide for the affirmative group that limits debate. The interpretation solves this in reasonability. As long as we don't jack any specific ground, then there's no reason to vote us out now on to OC counterplan. Extend the permutation to do both. There's also link evidence that was read in the 1 and C that indicates that interbranch conflict is going to drain Obama's political capital. If they were both agreeing, then there's no drain of political capital. I'll go the 5 solvency deficits to the counterplan versus there's a double line. First, either the counterplan reports to Congress and links up politics was he has to immediately report drone strikes in Yemen, which means that he would have to defend himself in Congress. Or second, it doesn't report to Congress. It doesn't solve any of the affirmative internal link explanations that were on the other flow. Second is the Farley evidence. You can cross-apply that here is necessary to judiciary check. The credibility of Goldsmith 13 evidence indicates that only the executive perceive it as accountable in the international sphere because they know he's always gone back on his word. Only the affirmative can solve the accountability and cross-apply the legitimacy advantage. Here, the Posner evidence was not answered. It's actually fantastic, and we read a lot of this. This evidence indicates that the Republican Congress would backlash because they want their voice on this issue, and presidents would lose all credibility. That means they don't solve any of our norms advantages. Is that good?
Yep.
Politics. Prove the top level of the debate. There's no scenario outside of terrorism that was not a great power war means mutual assured destruction. Checks all this. It's just a question of whether or not miscalculation would happen now. Dropping out the healthcare zone, but they have not answered this evidence. That is the only argument they have made is that it doesn't say PPCK. I'll read another piece of evidence here. Dover 1025. Obamacare to transfer the president who's even to about a sudden infusion of political capital. The man who's been pushed back in his camp now. He's been trying to beat back the latest unfriends of force and inadvertently providing evidence to support. The Delta have been trying to suffer in the beginning. You guys have gathered now group. the PC not key debate. They have not answered the kiss of death argument right, tying immigration to Obama's the only risk of bill failure is still as of 13. The key to immigration has not everything to do with the providing conservative coverage. Immigration only has a chance that the vote isn't turned into a limited set of Republicans' commitment to conservative principles, and Obama's capital kills it. Klein, 13 Republicans have strategic and substantial reason for making a deal. Obama should stay out of the deal, making as much as possible. Republicans will fight anything Obama proposes involved in it. Well, prices by staying out of Obama is making it easier for Republicans, and PC can do exactly nothing. Bennett, 24. Republicans are aware that the supporting bill. He hasn't raised urging the House has made antagonism. He has zero credibility. He wants to have the powerful. He has to do it with nothing, and their uniqueness evidence assumes that Denman has the capital to pull out the Republicans over. That means that the political capital is not key now. Their internal evidence on the economy is not reversed. Also, you can extend the to see evidence indicates that immigration witness all the growth they read. No piece of evidence indicates that collapse is coming now, or that the growth that they provide is necessary. No labor shortage. Martin 7 reports of labor shortages are coming to rise out of production price. Consumers are not feeling a pinch. Now on the group the food wars portion. Food wars are a myth. There's zero empirical evidence as Stalin 7. There's little systemic empirical evidence as the resources and diversity leads to conflict. Studies have shown that an abundance of resources are likely to contribute to conflict. 5 million people in Malawi have experienced food shortage. The figures, but Malawi has yet to experience where the tsunami did not lead to resources. Clearly, there is more to conflict than resource scarcity. Extended international 12 evidence, there's no scenario where collapse goes well with our internally guided arguments there. There's no reason to there's no empirical evidence that indicates that countries go to war in a collapse of economic situations. It's always been other. It's also pre-nuclear deterrence.
we're missing key.
Oh, nice job, Bobby Shaw. Sorry.
That's too tall. The order is T. Am I good? This debate will be one of tech, one of tech. There was way too many dropped arguments. Dropped arguments from the 1 yard to make this for them to win. They have conceded two interpretations, and they only have offense two. They've only have defense against our defense, and now offense against their interpretation, which means that you should default to competing interpretations. Now I will do the limits debate first. They make the topic bi-directional. They mandate that the drones are put into hostilities, which increases the hostilities. This is a conceded argument. There should be no new 2AR arguments, because if you cannot draw a line from your 1AR to the 2AR, then you should strike it from your flow, because I cannot predict the 2AR. Bidirectionality is bad. They steal all ground because it means that they could have drones good advantage. That is the core of the topic. They also make counterplan grounds. They are irrelevant. This should be the standard which you evaluate, because if it kills negative preparation, and also negative preparation, they have conceded a limits this, which means that small schools would drop out. Would drop out. Now there is would drop out if we win. That they mean that they increase drones into hostilities, i.e. increases war power authority. Then you should vote negative, because bidirectionality is bad. There is a clear topical version of the affirmative. You could just limit drone strikes to 2 a month via the plan tax. This is what your solvency advocate says. It is nothing about making the drones a part of the AUMF. A part of the AUMF now. A part of the AUMF now. A part of the AUMF limits also should filter the rest of the impact debate. If they only have impact defense and no impacts in this, then it is. We only need to win a 1% risk. The 1% risk that we have a better vision for the topic, which is important. Because it is about what the topic looks like. What the topic looks like now. There also the first argument. They say they are the actually sorry. Our interpretation. We have two interpretations. One is the one in C said increase must require a baseline. That's our Rogers Evans. The 2AC said restrictions limits discretions of the president. There is no counter interpretation on increase or a we meet claim. The 1NR said they did not have a we meet claim, and the topical drones apps would restrict within an already existing geographic and AUMF based constraint. Even if you think this interpretation is silly, or that they might have said this interpretation in the 2AC and the 1AR and the 1 or they have made or you think that they have said we meet they might meet, or if you think they might meet this interpretation, the 2AC and the 1AR have not made this argument, and they have not counter-defined these words, which makes the game over. You have expanded the pre-existing restrictions on war powers. Drones don't currently exist under the WPR, which means that they are not that. You cannot you can think this is silly. Give us say 23 next to our names, so that well, with point inflation it might be 29.5, but regardless you cannot penalize them for technical concessions, regardless of whether or not they could meet this interpretation, because they have not made the argument, which makes it game over. Now this is not mutually exclusive with our interpretation of the 1AR. There was no offense against T increase. That is not captured by the permutation. Even if the 1NR was short on this question, they do not have a counter interpretation. Now the
in order to access reasonability, you need a counter interpretation that is reasonable.
And in order to access reasonability, you need a counter interpretation which is reasonable. They do not have a counter interpretation or defense of that, or defense of the restrictions interpretation. Now the restrictions interpretation or one of the events that you need to limit authority, which they do not, because they put into the topic. This was the work done above. Now their first argument is that they are the core of the topic. That is not true, especially if their topical version of the F solves this independently. There is no reason you're the core of the topic. You can still restrict to drone strikes under our interpretation, which means we have a better vision for the topic now. A better vision for the topic now. They say that we only allow for affirmatives. That's not true. One, we don't. We just say to expand on a pre-existing restriction. You have to limit his authority. You could read F's like you could read the topical version of the F's I said above, where you could read an F like an F that bans drone strikes or bans certain drone strikes in war hostilities. That is a better independent. Even if they win this argument, smaller topics are better. They're getting in-depth clash over specific issues, which is better debates. So the goal of debate is who produces the best decision makers.
which, clashing on certain issues, are more important than big issues independently leads to argumentative innovations because constraints within a smaller topic allows for teams to think critically about those and how to the best of thrown. There's also not a lot of work done here. They just say that that they ban all Fs. If we don't, then there is no offense here. There's no then their defense doesn't make sense. It's a question of the interpretations and the text. Right now, their only other argument is reasonability. They're saying reasonability is not an argument that you need to claim in a warrant, which the 1AR certainly does not have. Reasonability is arbitrary. It allows. It means that we have to prepare for what every judge thinks is reasonable. If you take every judge and combine what they think the topic should be, it makes it impossible to defend against. It also means that no one could ever be prepared. That it links to the limits. Is that also they have conceded that competing interpretations are better. They force debate over what the plan text actually does, i.e., if the plan increases hostilities or not, which is the part of the debate they have conceded. There's also a precision dissent to this, which is impacted by the smaller topics, which is the smaller topics smaller prevents a better debate, which means reasonability is just a bad model for debate.
New in the 1AR.
What?
New in the 1AR.
Oh, that's also new in the 1AR. The 2AC did not make a reasonability argument. Even if they did, if 1NR preempted it, said reasonability is bad, and explained why, they do not rise to the claim in a warrant.
No counterinterpretation is given.
Yeah, there's no counterinterpretation. Topicality is the vision for the topic, not whether or not you think they might meet this or not. It is the vision for the topic that they don't have a counterinterpretation. It is interpretation versus interpretation. They don't have one. Simple.
How much script on that?
Yeah, 555.
Oh, sorry.
What part of the first game was this
Everybody good?
Other than T?
Yeah, just T, sorry. Just T. What makes debate shitty for small schools when Wake extends a T argument for 30 seconds in the line of the 1ER and then says that we should be able to be voted down on that? They have no interpretation or extension except for a dictionary argument that says increase equals pre-existing. The WPR is pre-existing. That's what we say in the 1ER. They say restriction is to limit. We do limit that. The plain text in a vacuum is definitely topical. He does no analysis of how the plain text itself is not topical. Even more important, at the bottom of the plain text, it says if you have any confusion, you should just ask us these questions. They don't do that in any of the cross-text questions, which means they could literally just say, do you restrict or do you increase drones into the WPR? Our interpretation is that Congress applies the WPR to drones directly, which is not to say that we give him the power to now use drones in hostilities, but instead that drones can never be used in hostilities, which means we take an unlimited scope of the WPR that is currently undefined and define it, which means by putting a definition on it, we have declined it. That's what our counter-interpretation is coming out of the 2AC. The 1AR gets massive leeway. Look, you went for all of your arguments in the block and extended it for 30 seconds. The 2AR should obviously get leeway. The funniest part is I don't even know what was drawn back to the 1NR out of the 2NR. He makes multiple extra arguments like small schools, and he also makes more arguments on reasonability that are not in the 1AR. Look, these are the things I can draw back to the 1AR. A bidirectionality argument. Tyler answers this and says that you should reject any portion of the affirmative plain text that is bidirectional. Anything that increases presidential power, just get rid of it. That's a reason that would check any of their offensive claims, because you could simply just scratch anything that increases presidential power. The affirmative in a vacuum decreases affirmative power. Drones are currently part of the WPR. That's the 1AC Farley piece of evidence. We just indicate that they are not currently being applied that way because Congress has not been willing to define the term hostilities. Defining the term hostilities would limit Obama's ability to introduce drones into armed hostilities, which would obviously to reduce this. This Farley piece of evidence should get some leeway coming out of the 1AR. It is not applied here, but it is applied directly to the counterplan as a reason why Congress restricts presidential authority and reason why the counterplan is incapable of solving, which is a direct application that they should be able to see coming, especially when they're going for such a shady argument. What did he do for 6 minutes of his preparation when all he had to do was answer 15 seconds of a 1AR? We should get to extend this here, and it is extended on the counterplan as a restriction. The Farley evidence literally uses the phrases of the resolution. It says it would limit presidential authority over usage of drones. You should prefer this piece of evidence. It's the only one in the context. Look, they have a dictionary definition. It says it has to be pre-existing. They do no analysis as to why the WPR is not pre-existing. They also say a dictionary definition of what restrict is. The problem is that their dictionary definition of what restrict is would mean that the affirmative would have to ban all introduction into armed forces. He does none of this in the 2NR. The 1AR, I definitely have making this argument that it would destroy affirmative ground because it would reduce and force the affirmative to ban all harmed hostilities because that would what the restriction would be under their interpretation. The 1AR says that they're doing something shady, but the 2NR doesn't extend this. Our interpretation of your 1NR restriction card is that we literally have to ban the entire topic. We asked that coming out of the cross-sex. We says 1NR, do we have to ban all war? They said yes. That is our interpretation. You should not allow a new interpretation and expect the 1AR to answer this fully when they only do 15 seconds of it. Reasonability is not a question of counter-interpretations. Reasonability is a question of whether you think this is the best model for debate. That Wake stood up in a semifinal round where there are multiple novice people here watching the debate and decide that 15 seconds of the 1AR is what you should use your ballot on. I think that's an uneducational model for debate, and I think it's horrible. Small schools won't come to this because that's a bullshit interpretation for debate. There are also a couple of arguments that they simply don't answer. Again, you can strike bidirectionality, but also unlimited. They say that there is an unlimited definition of what their argument is that there is unlimited definition of what war is. That is not true. We define war as an entry into hostilities. They currently do not include drones. It's not like we hand Obama drone authority and then say, you can't use drone authority. It's the opposite. The current text was used to limit drone authority, but is not being defined and not being enforced by Congress. We enforce that with Congress and say, Obama, you have to get this approved through the WPR. Their plan text in a vacuum is obviously not topical. He does none of this analysis. Their only argument is a limits argument, but obviously an appeal to affirmative ground is much more important here at the point where they still have all of their negative arguments. They have core generics, things like the negative politics is said. These are new arguments, but obviously are ones that they should see coming and are also ones coming out of the 2AC that indicate that they have core generics. Affirmative ground would obviously be more important. You make us ban the entirety of war, which means China would simply take their military up through Mexico and invade the United States because your interpretation means that we can no longer introduce armed forces into hostilities, which obviously would decimate any affirmative ground. I think it is more important for the debate that you say it is not academic for blippy arguments. You should also allow any 2AR arguments that are new, given the sheer amount of 2NR arguments that is new. There is no topical version of the affirmative because we don't ban drones. We're an introduction to armed hostilities. The internal links are based off of that. Our Farley evidence is an introduction to armed hostilities. They have offered no topical affirmatives. What are the topical affirmatives on our introduction to armed hostilities if it is not WPR? There are none of them. We obviously have to reduce the WPR. We think that including drones is that way. The Farley evidence is cross-applied here, admittedly new, but you should give him some justification to that. And that Farley piece of evidence is fantastic and says that it is a limit on presidential authority. Any affirmatives would obviously outweigh the limits argument, any affirmative arguments here, because we would literally have to ban all war. Is there anything else? Like, increase equals pre-existing is not applied. He does it so fast in the 1NR that I thought his argument was that the 1AR, that the WPR had to be pre-existing. I had no idea what this argument was. If you can draw back that that's somehow there, then I guess you can give him that argument. We don't increase anything under Obama's authority. There's no more drone strikes. Reasonability is not that there needs to be a counterinterpretation, although, albeit we have a reason why restriction is good. We think Farley should be cross-applied as a counterinterpretation. Reasonability is instead, do you think this is a good model for debate? Do you think the affirmative was good for debate? We think debating the WPR is. You should reject all of the other affirmatives that are not fun to debate. That's what reasonability is. I don't think we have to have a counterinterpretation. It's obviously you being a little bit objective, but like, obviously we're all objective here, and at some point we have to be like, WPR, maybe we should debate it.
great making it this far. The decision is a 3-0 for the affirmative from Iowa.
I can start. I don't get it. That's basically it. I don't know why it's bidirectional. They add drones to the War Powers Resolution. The War Powers Resolution is a restriction on presidential authority. There's just like a statement made that would increase drones in hostilities. I think it adds drone use to the definition of hostilities in the context of the WPR, and I don't think those are the same thing. And I don't really understand at any point the reasoning why that's not true, and so I don't think an argument has been effectively communicated. The 1IR was admittedly very light on this, but the first two arguments were the WPR is the core of restriction on presidential authority, and the WPR is a constraint, which I think is sufficient given that I don't really understand the negatives argument as to why the plan on face would allow bidirectionality or the length and if your limits DAs. So, yeah, I think this was an instance of ink chasing rather than sound strategic decision making. Because you were right that it was radically undercovered, but sometimes when things are radically undercovered, it's for a reason. I think this was an instance of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar. In particular, I don't understand. You are relying too much as well on explaining that there is a topical version of the AF, though I'm not sure why geographic or AUMF restrictions would be different than the type of restriction enacted by the plan, so that's very difficult to understand. But more importantly, I don't think that you've answered the question of what the hostilities, introduction of U.S. Armed Forces into hostilities AFs are, not what they are not. I think the AF gets some traction on, requires this part of the topic to be eliminate introduction of U.S. Armed Forces into hostilities, which is not a tenable interpretation of the AF. And the bidirectionality argument seems based on I wish that you all had communicated what seemed to me like some of the confusion, which is that your bidirectionality argument is based on the number of hostilities, but that's not bidirectional in terms of the scope of authority. The number of hostilities that's not the direction of the topic is the scope of authority, not the number or frequency of hostilities. So I mean, though the AF doesn't talk about it in those terms, I think that is in the 1AR arguments with regards to the WPR is a core topical restriction, and we add to an existing restriction, or existing restraint on authority. This, to me, would make more sense if I didn't understand why there were two interpretations of restriction in the 1NC. That was very odd. It seemed like the block extension of this argument was premised on, well, we're going for one of our two interpretations of restrictions. So now the offense that you read against the interpretation that requires, restriction as prohibition doesn't link. It's just very strange to me that the idea that you could pick and choose not portions of your interpretation, but one of the two interpretations of a word rather than an interpretation that places. That was something in the transition between the 1NR and the 2NR that I did not understand what was going on there. So yeah, I think it's anytime that your 2NR is premised on several times, all that matters here is tech, and even if you think this is silly because they meet the stuff, it doesn't matter because they didn't say that stuff. It's shaky ground. I thought this was an odd decision. We could talk about that later, but I guess I didn't quite understand why this was the 2NR direction.
I think it might have done what you said. I just thought they massively covered it, but I guess there's a
Yeah, they did.
Right, because they were right.
Yeah, they were just kind of right.
What would have been the ideal? Like, do you think what would have been the ideal 2-0? I guess in this fair and everything.
Well, I think
I
maybe
don't-
just taught this in case.
I kind of thought that was what was going to happen.
Because it's like there is this like Congress alliance thing, which is maybe a disadd to the counterplan that's like kind of mishandled. That got thrown in on the bottom of whatever case flow happens. So like they might have a solvency deficit to the CP, but it's not like they have like an internal link argument and impact on politics. So I feel like and admittedly that like when he read it in cross-ex, that evidence sounded pretty damn good. But I mean, you have certainly introduced like 3 or 4 pieces of evidence to the contrary, and you only really have to beat that argument to have a pretty big disaid. So,
that was kind of.
And given that they've like strategically kicked out of some stuff and like booted terrorism, you really just have it's like an adventurism impact, which is pretty amorphous and like kind of meh, and then this Senkaku impact, which, given that it's a resource conflict, I think you'd have reasonable inroads to an econ turns that sort of argument.
Yeah, that makes sense. The one question, like for that alliances thing that I had said all causes. Was that am I making? Because I had it flowed somewhere else. I think.
Yeah. No, you said that.
Because I didn't have an answer.
You had like impact D, but you didn't have any the counterplan is in. I didn't think it was like dropped or messed up. I thought it was an internal link that perhaps the counterplan hadn't been talked about like that was.
Okay.
I don't know what all was said, but I guess basically, I'm sort of with you on why you go for T. I do think you massively undercover this, and this is even one deal where just straight up, I don't have a lot of your 2AC flow. I did try my best, but the way that you transitioned your args, you were too fast for me. And so I thought that would have been problematic for a little while, but I guess ultimately the bottom line it comes down to, I get it. I do think it's stupid. I think that John's right whenever you're going to try to premise your debate on this is a really dumb argument, but haha, we got him. I think that does undercut your credibility. That's not the way you want to frame the debate. I think that if you want to try to go, like, you got to understand, T is 20 lines on my flow all the way up to the last 2 rebuttals where it just massively expands. And so I think part of your job, if you're going to do that, is really don't just say no 2AR answers, all that. Try to predict what the 2AR answers should be or cut them off more. And especially watch for them to start doing counter interpretations like they did with that Farley evidence. Like you got to sort of predict what the most likely 2AR is going to be, and specifically call out those arguments and why they should be voted, as opposed to just kind of the blanket, don't listen to anything new. Because it's all going to be new, because it's been underdeveloped up until this point, and now he's got the 6 minutes to just lock in on it. Again, I guess I'm a little bit with John. I think you do have your 2 restrictions definitions. You're conceding out of 1. I think fundamentally the baseline in Terp is wrong in that, it is about restricting authority. It's not necessarily about restricting drone strikes itself. And even still, I think, there's a lot of answers you can make that I do. Again, I just think you are flippantly blowing off T in the first 2 opportunities, and that is something you probably got to look for, or make some leeway arguments if you want to go to the rest of the debate or something. But, bottom line is you don't get it sold for me. I'll vote on the reasonability argument. I read the card that they cross-interpret, which I don't think you've totally foreclosed or given me a reason why I can't look at it. I do think that they're pretty on face attempting to restrict authority. Yeah, there may be questions about whether drone strikes get restricted totally or not, but I don't think that's their, burden to meet, and so, I don't pull the trigger.
I do have a question for you on the speed. Is it a transition from case to T that's too fast, or is it just all of it's too fast?
Well,
Good.
For me at least.
It's not paper shuffle.
Well, those T. T is a great place where I think speed kills. I love speed in debate, but the best debaters know when to slow down for certain parts, and that first 6 arguments on T is always something that I think you could slow down on. But in this round, particularly where you were going from the case flow over to the T, because I'm still trying to get the end of the case flow. By the time I then made it over to the T, you were already on your 3 or something.
Sure.
And that's where kind of, most times it never becomes an issue because the neg kicks it ultimately, but it's it was sitting there.
Yeah, it's just like procedural argument pen time is something that everyone is terrible at. And so I think that, that's why I gave the clear blast on T because I could understand the words that you were saying, but not in such a way that I could write them down. I also found that like you're super clear and sound really good on the case stuff, but as soon as you started reading blocks, you kind of went into like the monotone I'm reading things mode, which was like less clear and less persuasive, and I'm not actually sure that it's faster, even though it seems and feels faster, because there's like your breathing patterns get a lot worse when you go into block mode, and your communication decreases. So I don't know if speed is not words per minute, but arguments effectively communicated per minute. I think your cadence on the case was like a more effective and arguably faster in terms of communication than the way you were reading things on the keyboard.
It kind of felt like you were breathing like every fourth or fifth word on some of those blocks. The 2AC I thought had some clarity issues in general, but it was hard to. It did feel odd in that I agree that the early portion of the 2AC felt relatively clear, and then suddenly it was like, where did that go?
This is like a psychology thing of like speaking versus reading, because the case stuff is off your flow, and then so you're like speaking more expositorily, and again I think sounded really good, but as soon as it gets into the blocks, it's like there's this tendency to just think of it as an amalgamated ball of words as opposed to sentences, and you lose like basically the rhythm and natural breathing patterns of speech, and so it's like I could understand every word you said, I cannot always understand how they cohered into sentences. So it's not like it's a rhythm thing, really, and like breathing can come naturally. If you do like the read cards backwards drill, stop doing that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that drill's terrible. It teaches you to say words fast, but words aren't communication.
Comments on the 2NC argument instructions differently done better. Or do you think that is there any place that is like insufficient?
I think maybe given this exchange in cross-X, just did that exchange happen after the 2NC? It might have.
Probably, yeah, it did.
Okay, the OLC Libya thing might have been something worth dealing more with, and the only like structural issue would probably have been I wish there were like more answers on a variety of levels to this Congress add-on other than just like the impact level, because there's a scenario in which if you go for the counterplan, the F makes the whole debate about alliances, or at least develops that argument a lot more on the 1AR, and then there's trouble if you don't have any game on the link level.
I actually really liked a bunch of the structure on the case. I thought you did a good job of kind of selecting a few arguments to develop in depth. That was real solid. I do wish that a little bit of that development had included some more explicit responses to 2AC characterizations a little bit. The 2AC, while clear on the case, was a little light on some of the case arguments, and I think that you had a chance not just to really minimize large portions, but kind of make things real tough for the 1AR to they're already kicking large portions of the case, and I think I liked large parts of the 2NC structure. I do wish maybe also a couple more moments of looking up from the computer a little bit more. It's a 2NC, you're kind of motoring through. That's fine. It's no big deal. It just there weren't a couple moments of stuff where I felt like you were talking about what the app had said and or not developed in their own way, rather than just we have to get all through all of our stuff.
So, for example, like preempting what was like a 2AC cross-X characterization of, well, the president would do it because he'd fear like domestic political costs, so he'd fall in line even if Congress would never challenge. It's just like there's explicit moments where there's a response to something like that, which is more of an anticipated argument development than just like extension of your argument. Because that just doing stuff like that just makes the 1AR so much harder. Just because they.
Yeah, no, they have to.
Yeah.
Slowing down, it sounded like you might have some real good I liked the top of the counterplan on here are the portions of AF internal link arguments that make the counterplan sufficient. A little slower and kind of more quotable on that.
Sure.
With regards to AF evidence, because it's like there were one or two sentences. It's like, oh, I want to know the portion of the evidence that's being referred to here exactly.
Yeah.
And given that, that's got to be pretty slow so that I can actually write down the not just the concept, but some of the actual wording. That might be my one complaint. I thought stylistically, that was really good. Rather than just say you should evaluate it through the lens of sufficiency, it was here are the places that establish that the counterplan is sufficient. That's good. I do think that the counterplan. I don't know a lot of the WPR stuff all that well, but it does seem like a question that I don't really have the answer that I thought that you all might harp on more is just given that the OLC here would be the AF is characterizing the plan as defining hostilities, and the OLC advances a definition of hostilities that's quite. It's like that'd be a big deal. I mean, the executive has, as far as I understand, consistently maintained that it's like their first line of defense against the WPR is this is not constitutional, not it's like, and then they play some games with hostilities. It seems like an OLC interpretation that says no, this is hostilities, acknowledges in some way, for one, that the executive is bound by the WPR in a way that has not happened before. Or that the OLC thinks it is, and therefore, likely that the executive internally thinks so as well, or feels like it should comply with that. So that was a part of the relationship between the counterplan and the plan that, rather than just debate it as a set of cards about OLC is perceived, thinking a little bit more about what is the OLC doing. It's like what is the OLC doing in this instance, rather than just we're debating the OLC counterplan versus a plan that restricts the president.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
Is that, and your argument is we should blow that up on things like politics, or just like it's a massive backlash?
Well, I think that it's a reason that it both problematizes avoids the link to politics and improves the counterplan solvency, I think. Yeah. Given that, maybe a link to politics. I don't know. That's one of those. That's one of those where it's sort of like it's very difficult to imagine what the effect politically would be, given that it's something that would be very strange for them to do. I'm not quite sure what happened there. The other thing, one thing, just the plan text. Can you read the plan text to me again? I have a comment about it that I just don't remember because I can't remember the exact wording.
The United States Congress should determine that the offensive use of combat guns constitutes an introduction of the United States armed forces into hostilities as defined by the War Powers Resolution.
Okay. Yeah, never mind. Actually, I thought that because it did seem like the Farley evidence that you were using, which I thought was good, was more about Congress needs to define hostilities. One thing that does seem, and now, the plan wording does seem to match that. One thing that I don't quite understand is, given that the plan only defines drone usage in terms of hostilities, but doesn't provide a larger, I don't quite understand how just saying this little thing that we do is hostilities, how that affects the larger question of what does hostilities mean. But that's
drones plus whatever the hell else you wanted to.
Well, but see that it's like whatever the hell else you want. Well, whatever. I was just sort of. It's the first WPR AF that I've judged, so I was sort of just thinking through some of that stuff. It doesn't matter.
So we know you're going to have an awesome disadd to what that redefinition means.
Well, I probably won't write that, but maybe somebody on our team.
I have one more question just about arguments. Do you think the circumvention stuff was viable after the 2NC1AR?
Yeah, I think the only argument that you don't have like good game on is even if Congress would never. I think you're good on the Congress would never challenge. I don't know if you're as good on the president would still continue doing stuff given the introduction of new domestic political costs. Which I think you have the evidentiary tools to deal with. I just don't know if it's ever like explicitly just like their audience cost argument doesn't matter, and their war readiness stuff isn't a thing because it would still be the ability to do like covert strikes via CIA, which they would say is unencumbered by war powers because not the military or something. I don't know.
This is just, sorry for holding people up, but if I conceded that argument and you didn't go for circumvention, maybe it's reason the Counterplan stalls, because it's obviously public accountability. If that makes, I don't know.
From a debate perspective, yes. I think from a truth perspective, I actually don't. I haven't read the OLC literature myself, but as far as I understand it, the OLC is just the White House lawyers. Like, President asks his lawyers for an opinion, they give him his opinion, that's the end of it. Like, I don't know how binding, the OLC is, but that's more of a me thing than a in this debate round thing. Like, if you win your binding argument, which I get you're making, then yeah, that could be a reason why he won't circumvent, because it's his own people telling him not to.
It's like if the results are published, then
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah, I mean, it obviously raises the question of what internal links they're going for to that solve. So if they have like for the norms issue, it has to be like, I guess they just have that it has to be a legal principle, and so you could still put up that argument. The alliance thing still doesn't do it.
Yeah,
you might. It seems like also the counterplan in a post-Syria environment is maybe perceived more credibly in the sense that it's like the president basically, it's like accepting elements of self-limitation that previously had been contested. It's like it's possible that the public and the Congress might interpret the OLC's finding as, this is an administration that's trying to find ways to sort of bind itself. That seems credible. For the AF, one thing about the Congress argument for circumvention is it seems like, given that the plan has Congress define, as I understand it, the plan has Congress define hostilities to include this stuff. It's like one of the reasons it seems like the Congress has backed off in the past is that they were willing to do the WPR, but not really willing to define hostilities. And that's the way that it was like, oh, look, we're taking action against the executive, and then not willing to kind of go the next step. But given that the plan forces them to define hostilities, it's like suddenly they're on record as establishing, it's like in for a penny, in for a pound kind of thing. It seems weird that the Congress would back down so soon after saying, no, it's really important that this is, something that's enforced by the WPR. And, the notion that then they would suddenly say, well, when we said that those were hostilities, we obviously didn't mean that we cared about the WPR. That seems it seems like politically it would be very strange for them to do that.
The same logic of the audience cost argument.
Yeah.
Works for Congress too, because they would have committed themselves to that.
Thank you for
Yep.